Hey, Dhruv.
Hey.
Hey, Drew. So, welcome to Human Happy Hour. Today, our guest is Dhruv. He is a recent high school graduate and was the valedictorian of his class. He is heading off to college this fall at Georgetown University in DC. And he's been a political activist throughout his high school career, volunteering for the Bernie 2020 campaign in their national regional organizing team and for Wolf-PAC, which fights for campaign finance reform, along with interning at We Vote, a nonprofit tech company that allows voters to see what to expect on ballots. So Dhruv, already just coming out of high school, has quite an impressive bio here.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, it's I did a lot during high school. A little too much, I would say.
Wow, you mean when you say too much, it obviously didn't affect your grades.
No. But what it did, it affected sleep,
Mm,
um, social life, but that's like a balance. I would say that kind of happens with everyone.
yeah, definitely. When I was around your age, I worked at the movie theater full time, had a girlfriend, was in a play, in a band, and going full time to UVM. There was something
Hmm.
else. I think I had a full time job. Did I say that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
mean, I
Oh, D and
so
D. I
I
played D&D every night.
I I'm an avid TV watcher, so fit that into the schedule.
Yeah.
I had a job in a retail store, and then at one time I had another job at my school. So at one time I was doing both at the same time. Then I quit the retail job. So and then I finished up the year with the my job at the school. So yeah, throughout that I was also doing um, working at my school. And then I was also doing like the regular clubs, activities. I was in band. Um,
Oh man, how
so
did you practice your instrument with all of that? What
yeah,
instrument did you
so
play?
we would um I'd have meetings at 9 o'clock, but my rehearsals would be from 6 to 8:30 or 5 to 8:30. So it would be like my school would end at 2:30. I might have a club meeting that would go until 4. Then from 5 to 8:30, I'd have my band rehearsal. And then at 9, I'd have a meeting. And then I'd start my homework and eat somewhere in there. Um, yeah,
Wow.
sometimes it'd be crazy.
So I'm hoping that you're taking the summer to have fun.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I've slowed down a bit. Just because I realized how crazy it like I can't do it anymore, especially with the pandemic. Once we were in virtual learning and a lot of like activities like cut out. Like for example, I didn't have band for a lot of it because we couldn't meet in person. And I played like an instrument I can't take home. So it was like, oh wow, now I have these extra like 10 hours in the week. And then I just got more and more used to sleeping earlier, listening to podcasts, doing things that are more like not active things. And now it's like I like physically can't even like bring myself to have that many commitments anymore because I just know I won't be able to do it. Before I just like push through it. Yeah.
It's a good lesson to learn now rather than middle age getting totally burnt out from
Yeah,
career. Like it's good to know that balance is necessary,
yeah,
especially
for
like
sure.
going into college and beyond.
Yeah. I would definitely say like my senior year, I um I had a lot more because of the classes I was taking, they were kind of less demanding. So I had a lot more time and I was hanging out with friends a lot more, going out, to eat as much as I could. And I would say like those, it was really, really fun to have that kind of experience, especially like we weren't sure that we'd have that experience because of COVID. This year, kind of crazy to think, but we were 2 weeks virtual during the when Omicron first hit. So that's had a big impact on like what I've been able to do. And just how like my high school experience has been shaped.
How did you do during virtual?
I did great. I loved it. The way our school set up our schedule, they made
Hmm.
classes shorter. They instead of so usually we would have like a 5 minute passing time between classes. They made that 10 minutes, but you're not walking anywhere, so you just have 10 free minutes at your desk. Um, they uh a lot of teachers would be like, oh, like we don't have class today, like have this hour to yourself, or like because even they got tired, as it's expected. um and then like what I guess one thing that kind of sucked was that you couldn't do a lot of the activities like through clubs, which is what your high school experience is about, was like your clubs, your whatever sports you play, the whatever activities you're in, those are what really like shape your experience. And so we would have like virtual meetings, but it wouldn't be as fun. We couldn't have our holiday parties or pizza parties or anything like that, which we did have this year, which was really fun. We'd have like bagel breakfasts, and I thought, I'm lucky, I'm fortunate to be in a district, in a school where our school is supportive of us, while at the same time being careful about COVID. Um, yeah, and I was really fortunate to have that.
Do you think that COVID is um do you think that the lax or the raised awareness and carefulness of COVID has is justified, or like do you think that it's safer now, or do you think that everybody's just kind of like gone whatever?
Honestly, I don't even know because it's like I hear that cases are going up, but like I've no one's really talking about it anymore. And when I go out, I mean, I especially when I'm going to stores or anything, I'll wear a mask, but I don't see anyone else wearing a mask. Um, and then I'm like, wait, why am I wearing a mask? Like it makes me like feel like, oh, like I'm the only one. Um,
Yeah.
a lot sometimes my parents don't, which I can't control that. But and then sometimes my friends don't, and I'm like, oh, like you're not wearing a mask. And it's like a joke. It's like, oh, you're an anti-masker, you're like, but it's like they aren't wearing a mask. And I've heard so many conflicting things about like how effective they are, which ones to wear. It's just like at some point I'm just like, I'm just gonna wear my whatever I have, and I'm just gonna go out into the world because that's what everyone else is doing. I mean, I feel like there isn't really a lot of flexibility in what else, what other options are there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, let's get into the activism stuff because that's where what we wanted to
Yeah.
hear from you since you have such a long list. So I want to kind of like start from the beginning. So, when did you first get involved in politics and activism, and how old were you, and how did that start?
Yeah. So I was introduced to politics. I think I was a seventh grader. It was as like a normal seventh grader in like what 2015, 2016. I was on YouTube. I was watching my favorite YouTubers, whatever. And on my recommended page was the, I think, second presidential debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And so on a whim, I just clicked it. And it was like 3 hours. And I watched the entire thing. And at that point, I think I stayed up until like 11, which was a big deal when I was a seventh grader. And then ever since then, I watched the next debate. I went back and watched the first debate. And then because of that, the algorithm knew that I was into politics now, and I would get, introduced to more political things. And I got introduced to online progressive media, mainly the Young Turks, Secular Talk, a few others. Um, and and then I started just watching those videos, and that's how I got into the rabbit hole. Kind of weirdly, I guess I was recommended conservative media. And at that point, I mean, my mind was moldable, right? Like I could have gone either way. Um, but even just from watching the debate, I can like distinctly remember like, oh, like I agreed more with Hillary Clinton than I did with Donald Trump. I don't know whether that was because the thing is my family is not political at all. I don't think they've ever talked about politics unless I brought it up. So I wasn't really influenced by them. No one in my family, as a seventh grader, who's talking to you about politics, right? None of my friends were, no one else in my family was. So I guess I don't really know. I had this like preconceived like belief system that was more left leaning already. Um, and then yeah, that's how I got into like just politics in general. It's kind of funny how you call like activism. I don't really see what I do as activism. I just kind of like I just like am involved in like different organizations. I think that should be more common than it is.
I
I
agree. You're right. You're
yeah,
right. Yeah.
like I don't really see it as activism. I just see it as like me like spending 2 hours a week or 3 hours a week work fighting for something that I believe in. Um, and so I got into that through these online news or online like shows that would promote different organizations.
I love the way you break that down because imagine if each of us spent 2 or 3 hours a week, right? Like
Yeah.
fighting for a cause that we believe in or engaging with the political system
Hmm.
to change it in a positive way, we would be probably in a lot better place.
Yeah. And I think one of the things is like, especially at my age, no one was doing that. So I kind of had to figure it out for myself as to like doing my own research as to like what organizations are legit, what organizations do I agree with, and I had to like do some inner like searching of like why do I agree with them, or do I really agree with them, or if there's similar organizations, why do I agree with them more? um but I guess to be honest, like I was also like a kid trying to get into college. So I also was thinking about in the back of my mind, I was like, what would look good in college applications, right? And I wouldn't say that was what motivated me, but I would say that was influenced me as like how active I was in the political arena.
It's really interesting to me to hear that like you didn't grow up with a parent, because a lot of people that I would talk to, a lot of volunteers in that space had a parent and maybe they had the same views and they wanted to carry that on, or they had completely opposing views and they were
Yeah.
like, this is terrible and I need to do something. So it's interesting that you didn't grow up hearing about that and you found it
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, I don't think ever talked about it. They don't even talk about it now. Because they aren't plugged in. They don't know what's really going on. Also, from like my personal background, I am upper middle class, so it's not like I have had these like large, deep struggles where I had to like been forced into the political arena to fight for something. I think it's more about like I just really enjoy helping people. That's kind of like like to like the most simplest kind of thing is like I just really enjoy that. Kind of ever since like fourth grade, I would help my teacher. Like I'd like volunteer and help my teacher grade math homework while like everyone else was doing their work that I already finished. I would like help them grade math homework. And then what kind of funny, my freshman year, I went back to my fourth and fifth grade teachers and went back to help them grade homework and file and stuff. I just like really like that's just like what motivates. I love help. Like it makes me feel good to help people, especially teachers who, need any help they can get with the amount of stuff they have to deal with and handle.
Those teachers will
Wow.
probably remember you for the rest of their lives because, not a lot of kids are going back
Yeah.
to help with teachers like that. That's a great thing that you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so weird that it's almost like well, what I've noticed about like people your age is they're generally selfish. It's kind of comes with the age, and
Hmm.
you seem to have some sort of evolved like empathy or something. Like
I
uh,
think
it's weird.
I would say I have like I think I'm both kind of like I would be selfish in terms of like I don't know, like if I really wanted something and another person wanted, I would fight for it. It's not like I would just be like, oh, like you can have it. Like, but I guess I'm helping people kind of in a selfish way because it makes me feel good. It makes me like feel content that I'm helping you. Um, so yeah.
Oh, that's great. What about the debates fired you up? Like you said, you agreed more with Hillary Clinton, but it was there. I mean, a lot of people might agree with one or the other, but that doesn't really push them into doing anything about it.
Mm.
Yeah. I don't I don't know. I guess I first of all really like debates in general. Um, I think they're really intellectually interesting as to like you kind of hear two different perspectives, you hear reasoning behind them, and then the audience can make up their own mind. Obviously, that's not what happens at presidential debates. That's just
Mm.
like they're just kind of like trying to get um their like sound bites. Um, but I don't know. I think it's like the issues they were talking about were just so like broad and so important to the lives of everyday working Americans that I was like, wow, like I have to pay attention to this. Like this is what the future is. This is what, and I guess it was at that point probably I don't know. Maybe Donald Trump was like kind of an entertainment factor. Like I was like, oh, I want to
Mm.
watch this. I want to see what he says.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what kind of like pulled me in more at that time. But then the reason I continued was I was like, wow, like if we really want to change anything in our society, at this point, I mean, I don't know anymore, but at that point, I was like, the most important thing to do is look at electoral politics and see how we can, change who's there to then achieve the goals we want to. Now, I'm not so sure about if electoral politics is the method to get there, but it's still really important. So yeah.
So now where do you stand? What do you think is the most important thing
I I
to
don't know.
do?
There's just so many barriers in electoral politics with incumbents and I mean so many. And then there's also just but I think that it's still a great avenue to achieve widespread change. I don't really know any other way you can affect change in a meaningful, broad way if it wasn't through the government or through like our political system, which is why I'm so interested in politics. I don't really I guess like some people are interested in like just like politics as like people and like the politicians and like their polling. I don't really care about that. I care about like who's in, what's the composition, do we have the votes? Like that's what I care about. In terms of like how it's a vehicle to get something accomplished. And at this point, nothing's getting accomplished. So it's like, is it worth it to keep believing in the system if it's not getting anything done?
Do you want to run for any kind of political office someday?
I think that'd be so fun. I would, but I think it's
Fun.
really hard. It would be super hard. But I think that would be I would love to do that. That'd be like a dream to do that. And like I know that'd be a lot of work. And but I also don't think like that's another thing is like I don't think I'd be a great fit for that just because I want to do it. I feel like people who don't want to do it are better representatives, if you know what I kind of mean. Like they they're kind of just like pushed in by like people saying you should do it rather than someone wanting to do it intrinsically. Um, but kind of I guess looking towards the future, I think I'm definitely gonna want to work in that kind of sphere of like on Capitol Hill, maybe as an advisor or as an aide or anything like that. I think that'd be really cool.
I
I'll
feel
push
like
you. You do it.
as long as your value system of like wanting to help people and do good stays
Mhm.
the same, then excellent, right? Like it's
Yeah.
only bad when people have other values or other, they are running because they want to enrich themselves and
Mhm.
but I've told very few other volunteers and I'll tell you I'll volunteer on your campaign if you
Oh
run.
yeah.
Thank you. No,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
I think I actually applied for it's a pre-orientation thing at Georgetown, and it's called a campaign boot camp, where you shadow a campaign, a real one, and then you simulate it. And
Hmm.
I'm just really excited to, if I get in, to do that because I think that just knowing all the like the intricacies and like I mean I feel like as the public, we don't really understand how campaigns really work, or at least I don't, in terms of like what money it takes, the advertising, volunteers, infrastructure. I don't really understand all of that, what it takes. And I think that'd be really interesting to see what it takes to run a campaign.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. You have
The other, I guess, thing is I'm in where I live. My representative is pretty, like, I kind of align with my representative, so I wouldn't see myself running against her anytime soon. But I think definitely on the local level, I think I would definitely be willing to run on like local, like I'm really into education. So I was thinking like if I go to my local university in New Jersey, I would run for the board of ed in my town because the only requirement is you have to be 18. So I was like, I would love to have a say in like what people, my peers would be learning, right? Because I would just be like a year older than them. So that I think I would be really interested in.
What?
That would be
Wow.
really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially living in a town that like everyone runs or it gets elected unopposed, you know, there's no competition in the town I live in.
So
Yeah.
then you'll come back on here when you get these roles, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Wow. What kind of things, what kind of obstacles do you think would happen that might make you change some of your views when you get in? Because, people get into office and then everybody's like, what? You said you were going to do this.
Hmm.
So you have to ask yourself, are there pressures that can exist that actually do change a person? Can you think of anything that might be able to be an obstacle that might be a threat to change your
Hmm.
views?
Well, I think there's always a vocal, I guess like minority in terms of like, if you're in the minority, you're gonna be more vocal about it because you want to kind of act like you're in the majority. So I think it's tough for representatives to really gauge what their constituents' thoughts on specific issues are, just because if 90% of your constituents aren't active with you or your office and telling you, oh, I want you to vote for this or I don't want you to vote for this, then you're only listening to the 10% that's, super active and super engaged and is calling you and emailing you and writing you about these issues. And is that really like a representative sample of your entire constituency? I don't know. The other thing is on the local level, politics is much different than on a federal level. Like I know my politics on issues federally, but I'm not so sure I understand yet the intricacies of state level politics, of local politics. The other thing in my town is I'm like one of those people who like reads the agendas of like town council meetings and board of education meetings, and every single vote is unanimous. There's never anyone voting no, and there's never a discussion or a debate about anything either. So I wonder, is it because everything is so like, for example, the board of education, everything is recommended by the superintendent. So it's like, is the superintendent just that good, or are we not? Is there like something else going on where it's like everyone's just kind of going with it because they either aren't interested in finding out something else about it, or they're just kind of taking the word of the superintendent? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found it like because I have attended a couple city council like virtual meetings
Hmm.
where I live and read the agendas, and there's so few. Like what's shocking is how few people are participating in these
Yeah.
processes, and I'm like, this is the problem. And you're hearing from like the loudest people, and they are definitely not the people that were in that room were not representative, I felt like, of the demographic of people that I see walking
Hmm.
around in my neighborhood. So that
Yeah.
was interesting too.
Yeah. I went to high school in the second most diverse high school in the state of New Jersey. So I was really fortunate to have that experience. But kind of talking about representation, I didn't have an African American teacher until my sophomore year in high school in this entire district. And of all the teachers in my high school, there's about 10 that are African American, while the student, and that's like 10 out of 200. And
Whoa.
and the population is about 30% African American. So it's like, and same thing with Asian teachers. I've never had an Indian teacher. I don't think I've ever had an Asian American teacher. So it's crazy, kind of like, and that's our district is saying they're working on that, and I don't know how I don't know what goes on in hiring rooms, but it's that kind of thing of like who really has like the ear of like the people in power, it's really interesting to see that. And especially when it comes down to like education and educators who are influencing young people and basically like establishing what the future will look like. It's interesting to see that there's not enough representation in that field specifically.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, and I think, and it's getting harder and harder to be a teacher
Yeah.
in this country. So, like that's another barrier, because also like teachers have to go to school for years, and school is more and more expensive. They've got to have a master's degree, and
Mhm.
and by the time you take on all that debt and then start working and with wages that are less than they should be
Mhm.
for teachers, I'd imagine that's a big barrier too.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about education so much here already. I would love to be a teacher. I think I I've had so many teachers that have been so impactful on to me that I would love to do that for other kids. But it's like financially it's not feasible
Mhm.
in terms of like what for my future and like the lifestyle I want to live. And even I mean, teachers in New Jersey get paid much better than compared to other states, but it's still not enough, especially for teachers who have families. And so I know so many teachers who would have to work second jobs or um, take on or like go like or act like security, like get paid to be security at like school events. And but like even the pay for that is like very little, but they do it because they need everything they can get. And I just think that's so like depressing. It's like being a teacher is like enough work and then you're making them do other things
Mhm.
um to like supplement their income is crazy.
yeah. And being in teachers, it's nowadays pretty scary because not only because of school shootings, but
Hmm.
also you can be fired by just if people gang up on you. Like if you do the slightest thing wrong, that's seen badly by someone and somebody records it or someone talks about it. I mean, it's actually interesting because police don't have that. They can do something wrong and they don't get fired, but teachers get fired at the drop of a hat and they're expected to also save all the children.
Yeah.
It's like,
Oh, and
it's a very difficult job.
yeah, teachers play the role of like teacher, then they like a parent, if someone, and then social worker, psychologist, therapist. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I've talked to teachers about I've asked them for advice or any like I think some of the best relationships I've made in my high school career is just talking to certain teachers and like talking about their life experiences because I got closer to a lot of my business teachers because a lot of them they worked in the industry before they became teachers. And I was like, so what'd you do here? One of them worked on the floor of the stock exchange. I was like, that's so cool. One of them worked at Coca-Cola in Uruguay. And I was like, yeah, it's like so interesting. Like to have your experience and then you teaching me is like so cool. And I think that's something that's another thing that I wish would be more present in education is like if you're teaching me about business, for example, then I think you should probably have some experience in the industry. Or if you're teaching me about, I don't know, journalism, then you should have some experience in journalism, not just your degree in education and then you teaching me about something you've never done.
Yeah, you're right. Teachers should be something that people not only want to be because they want to teach, that should be financially rewarding. It should be like doctor, uh, honestly.
Yeah, when I was younger, I used to think about like there would be no doctors if there weren't teachers. Like there'd be nothing. There'd be no other career without teachers. So with through like using that logic, they're the most important people in our society.
Yeah,
So like yeah, I when I even I think I was thinking about this when I was in like middle school, and I was like, it doesn't make sense that they don't get paid enough or equally to like doctors, you know?
Hey, Drew, we've got a couple questions for you in the chat. So, do you mind if
Yes,
we
yeah,
jump
do
into
it.
those? So, I cannot pronounce this name. Cygnus woman,
Cygnus.
Cygnus woman says most activists can point to a moment or incident that kicked off their activism, what was it that triggered you to get involved?
I guess just like in general, the inaction of government and like the gridlock. So that's why I started volunteering for an organization trying to get money out of politics, is because I realized that all the other issues that I care about, nothing would get done if we didn't solve this one issue. And obviously, I care about so many. I care about education, tax policy, education, or I just said education, sorry. But I care about so many other fields of policy. And I was like, I can't spend all my time doing all these things, but you know what? I can concentrate and focus my energy in solving this structural problem is that is stopping progress. And it's like, it's stopping progress on both sides. So even if conservatives are like, oh, they're not doing this, well, it's probably because of the money they're getting from corporations, and then same thing with left-leaning people. So I think the other thing that I was found, I was like, it was a good topic, or it was a good area for me to volunteer with, because I could connect with people who didn't necessarily align with my views. And a lot of the conversations I've had in my school and in my life with conservative or right-leaning people, we've always found common ground in the corruption and how big of an influence special interests and dark money have on our politics. And I find that really interesting. And I hope that something can get done about that, within the next decade. Because without that, I don't think anything is going to happen. Like, I don't think climate change is urgent, right? But I don't think that would happen without first tackling these structural issues.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement here on all of that. Let's go. So the next one, this is a good one actually. Is it a challenge to have teachers and peers less informed on political issues than you are? And have you gotten pushback in your involvement?
So obviously I'm really interested and really active in this field. And so a lot of times when I'm talking to my friends about it, they don't really understand the gravity of some of the things I'm talking about. And I don't necessarily blame them. In school, we've never had a class that's like teaching you how to stay active in politics, or how to be involved, or how to like stay educated at least, or informed. They, a lot of times, like I remember in my AP US history class, I would make like connections from history to now, and then I'd ask a question about it, and it would kind of be like they kind of like not want to talk about it purposefully, because and I get it. Teachers are scared to address things about politics because they don't want to come off as giving their own influence or bias. And I completely understand that, but them not addressing these issues and not talking about politics at all makes it so like kids think that politics isn't really influencing them or has an effect on their life. And that's one thing I really want to like work on, is like, I think there needs to be more civic classes. I think there needs to, in history curriculum, there needs to be ties. Like you can, I can make these connections. I'm sure there are like, other people who are, a lot more educated in this topic that can make other connections. And I think those need to be drawn, because it also, not only is it important for people to learn about like how history can become, the future, but also it makes it more relatable. If I'm learning about, unions in the 1930s, I want to see how that connects to now, because I don't care about unions in the 1930s, but I do care about how unions affect us today. And so it just makes it more interesting to learn about if you connect it to things that are relatable to students. And then teachers. So all my teachers, I mean, I have, whenever I've, corrected them or like just added some extra information that maybe they didn't add, they're like, oh, like, that's really interesting. Like, none of them has ever pushed back on me, which I'm really, again, I've had great teachers. But other times sometimes I know things that just randomly, I just know, like, because I pay attention to the news or whatever, but I'll like refrain myself from like, in like giving this extra information, because I'm like, I'll let the teacher like control their class. I feel bad. when I like interrupt and I'm like, oh, like, did you know this? And then like it's only me and the teacher kind of interacting because again, none of the other kids are really knowing what I'm talking about. And when I say none, I mean like 80% are. There's 20% that are really politically active, and I really love having conversations with people who are my age about the future because we have the same skin in the game, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Do you feel like in those interactions with your peers, do you feel like people are more or less on the same wavelength in terms of views, or is there a divide there? And then also, where do people your age kind of go to express some of these things? Is it private chats, or do they do that on
Mhm.
social?
So yeah, all but one, or I would say all but like a handful, like two or three, have more or less agreed with me. But I think that's more because they, I don't really know if they actually agree with me or they just kind of said they agreed with me because they don't want to get into like a debate with me. But I've had really interesting debates with like like a conservative friend I have, and um, we again this like the friend that I was saying with that like we both agreed with corruption, but like he just came from like a different viewpoint, and I respected that because I was able to understand where he was coming from, and a lot of times I don't understand where other people are coming from, and that makes it a lot harder to kind of empathize with them or see their viewpoint. Um, but I and kind of funny story, but I became really close with him last year because he's a year older than me. And throughout the year, he went from like light right leaning or like really kind of far right to centrist. And all our mutual friends would be like, "You're the reason," because I just like pull him every day, just a little bit. Um, so yeah, I think that those are the most kind of meaningful conversations is when someone disagrees with you, but they're willing to listen. Um, or and same thing I would be willing to listen to them as well. And we'd I met this friend through Model UN, so that would be we'd have a lot of conversations about international and foreign policy. And that's an area where I admittedly like don't know as much as I do about domestic policy. And so I would be really interested in those conversations as well about like what's going on in the world and how does that affect us.
Wow. How old are you?
I'm 18.
Man, I'm trying to think of what I was doing at 18.
What were you doing?
I don't know. I definitely was not thinking the about politics. I guarantee that. Um,
Yeah, I mean, oh, and then to address the second kind of part of where people talk about this, um, I would say a lot of people, and I enjoy this, but a lot of people like text me specifically because they know I'm interested in politics. They're like, oh, like look, did you see this? Or like, and I love that. I love when people text me and they're like, oh, like you definitely know about it. So like, let me ask you. I also see not particularly my friends or people I know personally, but I see on TikTok a lot of young people are very active on Twitter. On Twitter, people, it's like more of like snarky comments, like funny comments about politics, but it's like at least you know about it. Like I think that's really, I would say any sort of engagement with politics is a good thing. Um, and people I think it's kind of like a meme, but like people always like repost those Instagram like store like those posts that people make and like repost it over and over again. People do that. That I kind of see as performative if you aren't really well. I mean, I guess you're doing something by reposting, and I'm assuming you read it, but I think there's more that could be done. Um, on top of that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like with social media now, a lot of people think, oh, I'm sharing this, so I'm helping and like that. And you're like, yeah, that's great. But also,
Yeah,
like you gotta like do something so that we can fix the thing that you're sharing
yeah.
on social media.
And the best things would be to volunteer or to donate, but a lot of people can't do that for whatever reason. But like rather than reposting, having like one-on-one conversations with people about the topic is much more impactful than just reposting it, and because chances are people are just going to tap through it. Like no one's really pausing. I mean, all our attention spans are so short now. No one's pausing to read 20 slides of something. They're just not. they're going to read the first slide, maybe the second slide, and then they're going to move on. So if you're having a one-on-one conversation with someone, that just makes it, you're making a bigger impact, especially in that person's life about the topic.
Yeah.
I also like the idea of just if you can't, like just do something kind, in the community or some kind, like get involved in some way to be helpful. Like, so even if you can't volunteer for a political campaign or, like work to change a policy, even if you're just doing something positive that's helping your neighbors or community, maybe it's a garden, maybe it's, like some kind of mutual aid that you're doing, that I see, like, because that building of community also helps us to connect, and then you can kind of harness that power into activism and action.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can vote now.
Yeah, I voted. We had the primaries in New Jersey on June 7th or 6th. So I voted and I posted it on my story. And I was like, oh my God, look what, like I had the sticker and I was like, oh look, like did my civic duty. And then actually one of my friends who actually might be watching this, and I'm sorry to call you out, but like 2 days ago asked me like, oh, when can I vote? And I'm like, that passed like 3 weeks ago. Because they're like, oh, I saw it on your story. And I was like, yeah, that was the election day. I was like, sorry. But I was like, okay, but now like the next election's in November, and then they're also going to college. So I was like, oh, you have to request your absentee ballot. And we had a conversation about that and what that is and how you do that. And so, you know what? I was like, even if you're late with this election, you won't be with the next one. So I was like, I appreciate that.
Oh, that's great. You should have something where you put out a letter to anyone that's turning 18 how to vote, and like an email or something.
It's very kind of complicated. In New Jersey, when you get your driver's license, it automatically gives you the option to register to vote and then to register with the party. And we have closed primaries, so you do have to register with the party to vote in whatever party primary. But in terms of like the ballot itself, in New Jersey, we do like column voting, which is like the same candidates aligned with the same party will be in the same column, but it gets confusing. And a lot of activists in New Jersey are trying to reform it because it gives preference to, it's down ballot voting, but like, so if like, for example, I live in Middlesex County, so the party that would be in would be Middlesex County Democratic Organization. And so Cory Booker is a part of that, but he's a statewide official. So then if you know Cory Booker, then you're just going to vote straight down the ballot. And it's really easy to do that if it's a column rather than like a bullet kind of list of like other ballots, what they look like. And it's confusing if you're voting within a Democratic primary because they're all Democrats, but then they all have like different names. It's weird, but people are working on that.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be making it really easy to understand sometime soon.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is, I was surprised when I went into the voting booth, I saw some names that I didn't even recognize, and they were kind of like challenging the incumbents. So that's why I kind of did a lot of work with VVote, is like, I wish that I had done more research on those candidates because I didn't even know they were running. And I think that's really important. I think there needs to be more kind of, and especially on the local level where you can't even it's not as accessible to see who's running until you see the ballot. I think it's important to, do your research in terms of not just vote for the incumbent, but do your research and see who's running against them and what do they stand for. And maybe they're better than the incumbent, maybe they're not. So you can't just always vote against the incumbent,
That'd be interesting if they had a way of giving you a test to see if you are familiar with all the main topics before you vote. But I guess that wouldn't be a free society then.
No.
Yeah. I mean,
be nice.
I think like, yeah, even if you don't have time to volunteer or something, like even if you have time to research and share that with friends, probably, right? It's like, hey, I took a deep dive into like this candidate and some of their policies, and share that. with
Yeah.
friends, maybe.
And that kind of relates to the work I did on the Bernie 2020 campaign. So I was on the National Relational Organizing team, and I was a moderator there. And basically the whole premise of that team was you're more likely to be influenced by someone you know, someone you love, your friends, your family, someone you have a relationship with, rather than just like a random person phone banking you. And so the whole point is we were so on that team, we were phone banking volunteers who already supported Bernie Sanders. And we were saying, okay, here's the resources and here's what you can do to talk to your friends and family, because that's going to make more of an impact than just a random person phone banking them, because you already bring credibility. And I think that's so important is to, that was like, I don't know if it's 100% true, but they said that that was the first relational organizing team nationally ever in the US. And I thought that that was really innovative. I never thought about that. I was like, oh, like, obviously, if, my best friend was to tell me, like, oh, I really support this person, here's why, I'd be much more influenced by that person than a random stranger saying, oh, okay, like, do you know who Bernie Sanders is? And here's why. And because I just don't know who you are. Like, you could be lying to me and I wouldn't know. So I think talking to your friends and family, even if it's uncomfortable, is really important. Even if you might not agree, just having the conversation, and then finding points of agreement. Like, I think I've never had someone disagree with me about campaign finance reform. Everyone agrees that we need to do something about the system. And I think it's really important to have these conversations.
Yeah, it'd be
Yeah,
good to
you're so
learn.
right. Oh.
It would be good to learn how to
Yeah.
talk to people too.
Yeah,
I wrote an article about that.
You did?
We
I didn't know
on the
that.
team we would make, or they, like, the staff would make resources as to, like, if they are so we'd like you'd rank your friends, and you'd rank them a 5 if they're already supporting Bernie, rank them a 4 if they're like likely, 3 if they're on the fence, 2 if they support another Democratic primary person, 1 if they are like a Republican or something. And what they would do is they'd say, okay, so you kind of would know, or you'd tell your friends to take a survey or whatever, and then you can kind of figure out where your friends lie on the spectrum. And then you would really focus on the 3s who are on the fence, or the 2s who support another Democratic primary challenger. So it's like, you're not trying to have someone from going super conservative to supporting Bernie Sanders, but you're trying to make the little changes, or the little, like going from Elizabeth Warren to Bernie Sanders is much easier of a jump than going from I don't know, Donald Trump to Bernie Sanders. Which actually I don't know, maybe I don't know.
Although in some cases,
that's yeah.
Actually, like some people did go, and some people went from Bernie Sanders to Donald Trump. Then when yeah, I would argue that you can swap that.
And that's something I'm really interested in actually recently, is like that kind of the populism thing, especially in the recent years, has really been coming up. And I kind of follow all like the progressive leftist influencers, and then I kind of like seeing how they see connection between the right wing populism movement and the left wing populism movement. And I think that might be the way forward in politics, is, agreeing to disagree on the social cultural stuff, and then agreeing on the economic policy of, like, we need to do something.
Yeah, I think it's so much a class thing, right? And I feel like if you can measurably improve people's lives, then you're going to get people on, the populace on both ends of the spectrum to go, yeah, I would like a living wage. I would like to be able to afford a home. I would like to, have affordable food and healthcare and all of these basic things that we need, to survive and support our families.
Yeah, I think if Donald Trump wasn't the kind of face of the right-wing populism movement, there'd be a lot more potential, because, I mean, so many people don't want to work with people on the right because they because Donald Trump is what they imagine when they see someone on the right? They imagine someone who's a bigot and, doesn't really actually care about any policy or whatever. But there are people on the right who may be just socially conservative because of their religion or whatever. And although I really disagree with them, I think that I would rather make progress on the economic front. And, there are some things that I won't condone. But I mean, if you, I don't know, for abortion, for example, if you are pro-life, but you agreed that we should have Medicare for all, I'm still going to work with you to get Medicare for all, even though we vehemently disagree about abortion. And, that's just one example.
Let's talk about that a bit, since that just happened, and you are quite popular in the chat, by the way. Someone says, I love Dhruv Shah.
Yeah, you have a fan.
Yeah, you have.
It's probably just my friend.
Julia.
Yeah, that is my friend. Thanks, Julia.
Well, thank you for watching, Julia.
And Javian.
Yep, Javian. Thanks, guys, for watching.
So let's talk about the Roe v. Wade overturn, and we've got a question in the chat about it. But this was also Jayson and I were chatting about this before you hopped on, wanting to know kind of how that's hitting with your generation, because of course, you're going to be impacted by this for much longer, than people in previous generations. And do you feel like that's going to boost even more young people to kind of get into the political sphere? And, how do you think how are you processing it, and how are some of your peers processing it right now?
Yeah, so we had that leaked draft, so we kind of all knew it was coming, but still waking up on Friday, I was still kind of surprised and in shock, as were a lot of my friends. This was actually an issue where basically all my friends knew about it, and were kind of engaging that discussion, even though maybe they usually don't talk about politics. And all my friends are kind of left leaning, so they all disagreed with the judgment, the decision. But I think that I don't know if it'll motivate people who weren't going to vote anyway to then vote. I don't know, but it has sparked a movement, especially on TikTok, where people are offering to help. So, for example, there's this TikTok I saw that was like, if you ever want to come to New Jersey to go camping or to the beach, I have a spare bedroom and I will drive you to go camping or to the beach. And it would kind of go like that. And so obviously that would kind of be like, oh, if you ever need an abortion in New Jersey, it's protected. So I have a spare bedroom and I'll help you. And so I've seen a lot of that within my generation, which is kind of more like grassroots organizing, helping, rather than electoral politics. The decision itself, I am really interested in the law. So there's kind of like a legal aspect, but I can understand the legal kind of reasoning behind it, that they don't think that the 14th Amendment due process clause implies a right to privacy. Now, I don't know what the history of that, which is what the court looks at. But what Clarence Thomas wrote in his concurring opinion about how that will now, he said that we should look at gay marriage, sodomy, and one more thing I'm forgetting. I don't know if either of you know it. Something else based on the right to privacy. Contraception.
Yes. Yeah. Access to contraception.
Yeah. So Roe v. Wade, I think a lot of people focused on how it's the right to an abortion, but it established the right to privacy. And a lot of case law based on those three: contraception, gay marriage, and sodomy, and that's what you do in your bedroom. That's based on Roe v. Wade, in the precedent it established. So it maybe some men think that this doesn't affect them. It does, because your other rights that were based on Roe and the right to privacy are now jeopardized. And that's, really kind of scary to think about. How far are we going to go back? And I don't see, I think the other thing that's really enraged me is not the decision enraged me, but even more is the kind of democratic response to it. I saw tweets about Nancy Pelosi was reading a poem, and then the
And
Democrats
they
were singing
sang,
"God Bless
remember?
America."
Yeah, they
Like,
sang.
what are you talking about? What do you mean "God Bless America"? Are you? I was like, what are you like? I was speechless. Like,
And
what
then
are
they
you
went on
doing?
vacation. They were like,
Yeah,
can't do anything about it. Yeah.
and then I, I think they think we're dumb because they could do something right now. They could end the filibuster and then codify Roe right now. And
Yep.
they're acting like they're helpless and like, oh, you have to vote next election and you have to vote for Democrats.
Hold on.
And
What can
yeah,
they do?
end the filibuster.
Okay, and then it codifies Roe. How explain that? Because
So
I do not know this.
so the filibuster makes it so you have to have 60 votes in the Senate to pass anything.
Yep.
Obviously, they don't have 60 votes in the Senate to codify Roe, but they could get to 50. Joe Manchin is, whatever. Cinema, I feel like would. And then Susan Collins would probably go over. Lisa Murkowski is an option to go over. So you would get to 50 some way. And so if you end the filibuster, you would only need 50 votes to pass whatever legislation you want, because it's majority rule. And then the vice president will come in as the tiebreaker to get to 51.
And that would reverse what the Supreme Court just did?
It wouldn't reverse what they did. So because the right to an abortion was based on it was a constitutional right, as what in Roe, that's what they established. But if you just make it federal legislation, it would just be like something that the federal government says you have a right to. It wouldn't be constitutional.
Good answer. I was just testing you. I knew all of that.
Yeah, because like the Supreme Court is bound by their interpretation of the Constitution. Yeah. So
that's something where I also watched the Supreme Court hearings, as a nerd. And so I remember which justice it was, but they were talking about the checkpoints they go through and when evaluating a case. And I always thought that one of them would be public opinion or the impact on the public, based on a decision. And so a lot of times, the reason that they haven't been considering overturning Roe before is because to take away a right is very that impacts a lot of people and upends, livelihoods and your access to something you thought you had, forever. And so now the court is kind of saying we don't care about public opinion, and to have any branch of government say we don't care about public opinion at all. I mean, I get that they're supposed to evaluate the Constitution, but I think public opinion does matter, especially when that's who it's affecting. And I guess that kind of is antithetical to the Supreme Court itself. It's supposed to be insulated from the public. That's why it's lifetime appointments. I don't really know how you would fix that, other than just doing term limits, but even term limits is like you're just waiting. They're just going to resign under whatever president they align with more, and that person will just appoint someone who's basically the same person in what they're going to vote with. So and in our system, we are also in a common law system, which means a lot of the law that we live under is established through the courts in addition to what's established through the legislature. So that's in other countries that have more of a parliamentary system. They also have a common law system, but they aren't kind of binded by what the Constitution says in necessarily. They have the ability to look at more of what they think the law should be, rather than more of what the Constitution or the founders, that's crazy to me as well. It's like you have to look at what the founders think it should be. like these 10 people in a room 250 years ago. I mean, who cares
It
what they
didn't
think?
believe that anybody except for like wealthy white men had
Yeah.
any kind of rights to anything.
Yeah, and then people, I mean, there's someone I follow on Twitter. His name is Elie Mistal. He's a justice correspondent for The Nation, and he has a book that basically argues that you should get rid of the Constitution and rewrite it. And he was saying how like there's women aren't, they're not anywhere in the word woman isn't in the Constitution. The Constitution had was like supporting the institution of slavery. So like, why are we living under this document that didn't recognize more than half of the American population? I just don't know. But that's another thing is like although I'd love to, work and redo the Constitution, I don't think that's ever going to happen in my lifetime. And so I just like have resorted to, learning about it and learning how it works and then kind of playing within that system. But for sure, if in any other worlds, we would just scrap it and start something new.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen
No.
anytime soon at all. But it'd be great. But who'd be writing it? That'd be a little scary.
I mean, yeah. I mean, who wrote it back then? It's already scary.
Yeah. But wow, now with the money influences, I mean, as much as it is now, geez.
Oh yeah.
You're right. I guess you would have to get the money at, like, fix that, and then have a representative, I guess, delegation, of people, all different demographics, and that people trusted, and then they would have to come together and do the writing.
Maybe we should just be a true democracy where everybody gets a vote, and those votes actually count, and you use that as everything.
Oh my God, it makes me insane when people talk about America as a democracy. We're not a democracy. We're a republic. And that's just like factually, we're not a democracy. I wish, and I would do so much research on like what the difference was between democracy and a republic, and it'd be so hard for me to like figure it out. But at some point I figured out like, oh, okay, like democracy means like every person has like their own, they vote specific, like directly on whatever is being the topic, and then in Republic, you vote for someone who will then vote for you in terms of whatever the topic is, which I don't know. I can see the merits of the system because it's supposed to be more efficient, right? The whole point is instead of 300 million people voting for something, those people are voting for someone who will then vote for them, which is then more efficient. But is it really more efficient?
You mean the college? Are you talking about the electoral college, as opposed to?
So I was talking more about like just like legislation in general. So like in Greece, where they had a democracy, they would need like all the citizens would vote themselves into like whatever thing they were talking about, discussing. But that would take so like, logistically, like that's a lot for that many people to do.
Well, maybe not with computers. I mean, I'm sorry, but nowadays it seems like everybody's got a phone, or at least access to a phone, a smartphone. But that would be like rewriting the Constitution, to be honest.
It's depressing to think about all this and how much our system is broken inherently. But it's important to just kind of acknowledge it and then move on and figure out how you can work within it.
And the fact that if everybody agreed that it was broken and knew that they could do something about it, which they can, and all agreed to do something about it, that we actually could fix things. That's the really frustrating thing.
Yeah, just if more people got engaged, generally like that could help, because as we talk about, so few people are engaging with this stuff. I'm gonna also take some time to read some chats that we have.
Your adorers.
Yeah, so much Dhruv
no, please feel free to spam
in the chat. And Natalia says Dhruv Shah is so amazing. And Alex Talk says, I talk to people who have 3 or 4 times more years than Dhruv, but wouldn't know any of this. So, which is very true. There are many people much your senior that could not break these things down in the way that you are doing. So yeah, super impressive there. And yeah, I think, and then Kay says, my opinion is that the system isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it's designed to do. Yeah, which is, yeah.
Mhm.
I have to say, I agree there too, Kay.
Yeah, currently it's just designed to sneak by everybody, it seems. It's like it seems like the right, they're kind of open about being bad and the left are like trying to pretend that they're good but not doing anything. And so the right can just be really, really forceful, and the right always join. They join together very well.
They fall in line.
Yeah, they fall in
Yeah.
line, and the left does like fight over the smallest details.
Yes,
And
that makes me insane. That's why
yeah,
that's I think so much of the reason why Democrats Democrats already have a disadvantage with gerrymandering and just I would just say gerrymandering. And then you take into account, I mean, every candidate on the left is like purity tested to the extent, like to crazy extent where they have to be perfect. And you're never going to find someone perfect. And if we keep like being cannibals within ourselves, we're never going to be able to fight the other side. Like, I don't know how you would ever fight against the other side if you can't, you can't agree on one thing. That makes me crazy, is like, that's why we're not winning, because we can't get our own ducks in a row. How are we going to ever convince independence? Or yeah, it just makes me insane.
Yeah, that and like the right, especially the far right, is much better at infiltrating all different institutions, right? Like we don't really have people, like, because as you're saying, there's all this fighting of like, this has got to be this way or that way. So we don't have people going into these institutions also that are like sharing those values or becoming influential in those ways. And so more people, like churches, for example, like people aren't, the people that go to church, you're not going to stop them from going to church. But what you could do is maybe have some people that are left leaning in there, like socializing and maybe sharing some of those views and getting them used to that.
Yeah, I see. I've learned a lot about the Bible actually on TikTok, and how like a lot of what it professes is like would align with left-leaning policies. But like no one ever talks about that. Like you know what I mean? Like I feel like so much of the religion kind of area has been co-opted by the right wing. While most of like the things of like being good to your neighbor and helping the needy, like that, those are things that align with the left, and no one makes the effort to kind of make that point.
well, it depends on what color their skin is. Your neighbors, they want their neighbors to be the right ones too. But the Bible actually has a lot of right wing stuff too. I mean, it endorses slavery in Exodus 21. Like, so it's like the Bible's. I hate when people use the Bible in politics, just because. So many reasons. I don't know how it's to say it, but I feel like the Bible should not be used for rational decision making. I think it's a nice hobby.
It shouldn't be used in
basically
forming public policy. You can use it in your own belief system.
Yes.
But it shouldn't be influencing what everyone else has to live with,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like what I'm saying, like in terms of going into these is not using that for decision making, but just like building trust with people that are, in those communities, and then maybe exposing them to like some ideas about labor unions or, like other things, like using that as kind of an avenue to build trust and, and then kind of socialize them to these other types of things.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess what I meant by that was like I have a lot of beliefs. But a lot of my beliefs seem to be towards helping people and bringing people together and not excluding anyone and not stopping anyone from doing anything horrible or good or anything. Like I don't try to, and all my beliefs seem to be helpful. Um, with religion, it seems like the views are can't be personal because the morals are so high that they have to share them, and by sharing them I mean try to make you do
Infringe
them.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the problem with it is that it's so, the stakes are so high for people that believe in those religions that they have no choice but to be passionate and outward about it. So when we say keep thy religion to thyself, it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
And if they did keep it to themselves, you'd think, well, they must not really believe it, because if I believed that, I wouldn't want to keep that a secret. So that's what makes it so difficult. I believe anyway, but I really just think religion should go now.
I mean, I think the kind of fundamental role of religion is to like kind of bring morality into society,
Sure.
or that's what the role should be. Um, and that's a great thing. I think, everyone should have morals. And each of the kind of religions do that. They all tell you, not to murder people, not to lie,
Mm-hmm.
just be a good person.
Yeah.
It's when you go into like the Bible and look at like specific lines. I'm like, why do you who the Bible? Yeah, I'm sure there's an answer. People believe in that answer, but like, I don't know. Like, I just think like just take away the fact that you need to be a good person and then move on.
I think God actually interrupted your stream for a second when you said go into the Bible. You went out just for like a little bit. So I'm just saying, like,
Divine intervention.
Yeah. So what did you say when you go into the Bible? What? It goes again.
So when you go into the Bible, I don't think you should go line by line. I think you should just take the overall message, which is usually be a good person, and just take that with you in your life. And I don't think. Well, personally, I wouldn't want to be governed by a book that I barely understand, that other people tell me what it means, and then say like that's how you should live your life. It should just be like the key principles of don't lie, don't murder, don't steal.
Yeah.
And then
I think we can get that from our parents though, right? Like we don't really need a Bible for that.
No.
I mean, I don't know if I didn't learn it from the Bible. I think I just learned it. Maybe from G.I. Joe and stuff.
People who use religion as a way to, because they need a belief, like they need something to believe in that's bigger than themselves, or a place after death. I think that's a great, I wish I had like some closure or like some like really like strong, like I know, there's heaven, or I know there's hell, or whatever. I kind of subscribe to the system of, I believe in a reincarnation system where you're reincarnated until you're reincarnated if, to kind of simplify it, if your bad deeds outweigh your good deeds. So if you have negative karma left over, you would be reincarnated to then make up for that. And then when you would reach heaven, or what in my kind of spiritual religious belief system is called moksha, would be when you clear all your kind of debts, or like your whatever you owe to people, or your files, what they call them is like, I don't know, like your dependents, people, your good outweighs your bad. That's when you go to heaven. And that's like what everyone's kind of going for, is like they want to get to that point of like eternal bliss. And I'm not a super religious person or a spiritual person. I don't really think about it a lot, but I do kind of believe in that. And personally, I believe in that. And I completely understand other people who believe in different things. And that's a great, I think that's a great use of religion in real life.
Yeah, I think like there are definitely things like fostering a sense of community and, things like that for sure. I think it just gets dangerous when you're using it to control people, or when it's inserting itself into government. Also, like the the Bible itself had so many different writers, which is why it doesn't make sense half of the time, because there were lots of different writers, and there's
And
I
the
read,
translations between the
yeah,
old and
and all
new.
the translations. I was in college. I read the Old Testament
Mhm.
in a course in some apocalyptic literature, and so I'm like, as a piece of literature, it's fascinating, like I'm just like Jayson, where I'm like, yeah, we shouldn't use that in government, or like, line by line. Like, I mean, like any books, like with authors, like you can certainly take lessons or values or things
Yeah.
from them. And like what you're saying, Drew, like you can take that from the
Mhm.
Bible too. You can say, oh, like this is an interesting story and there was a moral to it. And, maybe I can learn and take something from it. So that aspect is good and interesting. It just, not in our legal system.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I'm trying to make my schedule for my classes next, or I guess in the fall. And Georgetown has a theology requirement because it's a Catholic university. And so there's two kind of options you can take. You can take biblical studies, or you can take the problem of God. And I'm taking that class, obviously.
Oh,
And the
please tell
class,
me how that goes.
yeah, I'm gonna report back because I think I'm really excited for that class of like just going into questioning it, and in an environment where there's students from different backgrounds and the professors from a different background as well. And just seeing like what comes out of it. It's the class just sounds so interesting. The problem, like the name, the problem of God, like that, just so many things can go with that.
Yeah, that is. I'll tell you a funny story about like being in college in a class with people of different denominations, and like, so I was raised Jewish, and we were talking about the crucifixion in the class, and I must have been one of the very few Jews in the class, and they were talking about Jesus getting stabbed on the cross, and the professor's just talking about it casually, and I'm like, wait a minute, like, because I didn't learn that growing up. So I'm raising my hand and I'm like, when did that happen? They stabbed him too, and they're like, and the professor's looking at me like, what do you mean you don't know this? And then I had to say, well, I was raised Jewish. They're not going to teach us about the crucifixion in Hebrew school. And so they had to like back up and explain it to me. But
Oh
it
my
was
God.
Yeah. I think so much of our society is based off of Christianity that it's so hard for other, it's so hard to learn, even to learn about other religions. In school is a great kind of concept of like everyone, it's always decorated for Christmas, but is it ever decorated for Hanukkah or for Kwanzaa or for Diwali or Holi or Eid? There's like, I just fundamentally in the Pledge of Allegiance when it says, in God, I forget it, but in something about God, and it's like, well, I like, or people who are Hindus believe in that there's hundreds of gods. So when you say in God, you're discounting our faith of that there's multiple. So just those like little things influence me to like where I'm like, maybe I'll just go with like what Christianity says. Like in elementary school, I would be more excited about Christmas than I would be about like holidays that my family or my religion or my background would want me to be more excited about. Like I'd be more excited about, or I would know more about Christmas and the background behind Christmas than I would know about Diwali, and I think it's weird when we're living in a society that's supposed to be a melting pot, that's supposed to be, you're supposed to be free to practice or learn any religion, but there's one religion that really sticks out and is I can't say it, but it's like present in society so overwhelmingly.
Omnipresent?
I was thinking omniscient.
Yeah, omniscient.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just can't sometimes say words.
I'm gonna like we took a wild turn, which was really interesting. But I want to make sure that we also get to like your journey, in terms of like.
Oh my God, yeah, we started with how the debates happened, and we got to religion.
What is the name of your belief again?
So
I just want to know
my
what it is.
family is Jain. It's called Jainism, and it's a subsect within Hinduism. Um, my family and I aren't devout people. Like we aren't going to temple every so often. But then there's this kind of a separate thing. It's and that's where we follow. It's a spiritual thing more than a religion, and that's where kind of my beliefs of reincarnation and stuff come from. Although they are tied to Hinduism and Jainism.
Thank you. I was just
Yeah, thank you for sharing all
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
that, Dhruv. Um, yeah, it was also a really, really interesting turn that we took. Yeah, but so I wanted to do the chronology, right? Like, so we're talking about seventh grade, right? Like,
Mhm.
so then what was the first action that you took, and then talk about like getting involved in these different groups and what
Yeah.
did you do?
So seventh grade is when I started, and then eighth grade, I was an eighth grader, so just chilling. I was still watching, consuming all this media. Then the summer or the August before my freshman year, so in New Jersey we start school in September. So in August, I signed up to volunteer um, for an organization trying to get money out of politics, and so I started with that. At first, I wasn't very much involved, but then I got more and more involved as things happened. We were working in legislation in New Jersey it was a transparency bill. And that's when I really got involved because so it passed the legislature, but the governor decided to send it back. And so not basically kind of like a veto. I forgot what it's specifically called, but basically send it back for revision or whatever. And I remember in like during the school day, I would write out the script of I would make my so at that point the organization didn't have scripts for phone banking or to call our legislature or the governor's office or anything. So I would make my own. I'd type it up in my notes app, and then I would have my friends call the governor's office and I'd be like, here's the script. And I show them on my phone and they'd call with their phone and we do it in class. I have one of my teachers to do it. And I would do it like every day kind of thing. Just to like build kind of pressure, even though it was like a group of like 10 of us doing it just like every day or every week. And although my friends like thought they were like, why are we doing this? They didn't really understand it. I was like, just do it. And they did it. So I was like, even though they didn't completely understand, I was like, thanks for doing it. Like, thanks for like, just trust me. And they did it.
I love that. So did any of the teachers get upset when you were
So
doing that during school?
when we would do it, it'd be like, it would mostly be doing like a study hall kind of thing. So we were kind of free to do whatever. One time though, I did it during an English class and I was like, oh, can I just make a phone call outside? And I didn't really tell him why. And he was like, yeah, go for it. And so I did it then. But yeah, other than that, it was like during my like own time kind of thing. So that was, I guess, freshman year. Um, so I continued to volunteer for this organization until February of this year. Um, so in the middle of that, in June of my sophomore or my freshman year, so right around when my school was going to end for the year, I started volunteering on the Burning campaign. I like signed up to volunteer on like the first day he announced, and it was like that one of the numbers that they'd always talk about was like, oh, we had 1 million people to sign up to volunteer on the first day, which is really cool. And then I kind of got into the friend to friend team or the National Relational Organizing team. And what we do is we'd have shifts there. And so I started off as a person who just phone banked. I actually had a conversation, I like phone banked and I got to it was like a dialer. So it would be connected to your laptop and it automatically dial numbers for you. So you wouldn't have to like end the phone call and then put another phone number in and, so one of the persons I got to talk with was Claire Sandberg, who was the national organizing director. So she was kind of like my boss, like the boss of my boss of my boss. Like she was up there, because her phone was in the system because she would sign up for, whatever the thing was. And so I had a conversation with her, which is really fun, about like she's like, oh, how's it as a volunteer? Like, what's your experience? Do you need more support? Stuff like that, which is really cool. So I started off as a volunteer, just like doing phone calls, and then I volunteered to be a moderator, which would mean like I would be the shift kind of supervisor kind of thing, where if anyone needed help or they had technical issues, or I was just like the hype person. So if like someone got like a commitment from a volunteer saying, "Oh, like I'll call 3 of my friends," or something, I'd be like, "Oh yay!" Like, and I put like all these emojis and Slack, and um, so and then Bernie dropped out. So um yeah, I on Super Tuesday, which was like when we kind of knew that he wasn't gonna win, I was actually in Atlantic City for a business competition, and I was in my room with CNN on while all of the kids were like, wherever, hanging out, playing games or whatever. And I was in the room like just watching CNN. I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like I was so that day was crazy. And that was also and that was my sophomore year. And that was also when the first cases of coronavirus were getting in Washington State. So there was like kind of like the Super Tuesday, and then first COVID cases, and then COVID happened. And throughout COVID, I was looking for kind of like an internship just to get more experience, and so I found WeVote through Idealist, and I so I originally signed up as their or like applied to be their communications and marketing intern. I was the first one there, so like there was no communications team or marketing team. I worked directly with like the CEO, and mostly I would first when I first started, I was involved with writing newsletters and kind of like more like data stuff, like transferring emails from this platform to this platform. It was a lot of tech stuff. Um, then they hired like a director of marketing and communications. But he was also volunteer, but he just had like more industry experience. And when that team started, I still was on the newspaper or the not the newspaper, the newsletters. And then we also started, because it was a nonprofit, we were able to get $10,000 worth of Google ads for free a month. So I was in charge of that. And I gained a lot of valuable experience in Google Analytics and Google Ads. I actually, the CEO wanted me to run or start my own team, the analytics team. And I would like teach other interns who were like college students how to use Google Analytics and Google Ads and what that would mean, ad click to click ratio and all those like convertible things. And that was a really great experience, because not only was I learning a lot of skills, like hard skills that I could use in other contexts, but it was like a civic thing. So the app would help you look and see what would be on your ballot, look to see what it was kind of like a social networking kind of thing as well, because you can connect with friends who would then you can see who your friends are voting for, and then you can see that can like start a conversation of like, oh, I wonder why they're voting for that person, I want to vote for this person, like let me ask. So yeah, I love that. And that ended in January of 2021. And then I'm wondering if I'm missing anything. I think that was it in terms of uh, outside organizations that I've volunteered or interned for. In school, I was kind of always very involved. I My friends would joke that they would call me Mr. President times 4, because I was president of 2 clubs, co-president of another 2 clubs, and then club director of another club. So I just love leading and micromanaging, and that's just kind of the person I am. So I was just in a lot of leadership things in school.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. On top of, yeah, I'm trying to think about how many of these things overlapped, and that it's so impressive that you were able to do that and then do as well in school as you did.
Yeah, it was hard. I think I don't really know how to explain it to people, because one of our friends was like, you always seem to have so much free time, but you always get your like work done. Like you always have so much work to do, but you always have so much free time. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really know how that happens because I I intrinsically cannot bring myself to turn something in late. Like I just can't. Like I would rather like I'll figure it out. Like I'll just do it. And you know, um, I I people ask me for like how I like was able to juggle everything. And honestly, like it was just like time management. I always had a calendar, my Apple Cal, like I use iCal, everyone else uses GCal, but I just like how it like integrates with everything. And that's how I would keep track of everything. I would like time block everything. And so people would make fun of me when they look at my calendar because I'd like like freshman and sophomore year, I would time block snack. Like I would time block that out. And they'd laugh at me. They're like, you have to remind yourself that you have to eat. I'm like, no, it's just like I need to know what my time is going through so I can like get everything done. Um and
Wow.
yeah, that's just yeah, that's how I'm like a very like OCD-ish kind of person. So even though my room is messy, I just like need I'm like I get very obsessed or I compulse over things. Like I get very I hyperfixate over things. And so I like make everything perfect, make everything color coded, or that's just I just enjoy that. Today, right before this, actually, I was helping JVN making his like class schedule. And I was like color coding things, and he was like, oh, thank you for doing so. Like, I enjoy this. Like, don't worry. Like, I really like doing this.
Wow. When's your next snack? I'm
I
just
don't
curious.
know. I mean,
I'm just
I ate,
curious.
I think I'm gonna eat after this. I'm gonna eat ice cream. That's what I do every night.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. I feel like soon we're gonna see like Drew's TED talk on like how to organize your life.
I think uh that'd be like my dream job of like just like organizing people's lives or being like a executive assistant or like I would love to do that, like being like a full-time like person for like, okay, you have a meeting this time, you have to fit it in this, like I would love to do that. Like, oh, you have a family thing here, you have to run here. Like, I don't know. I wanted to be a receptionist. I was looking for receptionist jobs for the summer and I couldn't find any, but I just love filing and I don't know. I really like that because it's like so orderly and it's just like exactly what to do and yeah.
I get that it can be like for people that enjoy it, like it can almost be therapeutic and calming because there
Yeah.
is like I get a sense of order in that, like
Hmm.
in a world that is clearly in chaos right now. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
that
Yeah.
was
Well,
that was one of our questions we had. What is your dream job? So is that
I mean, I guess that's
is
not
that
like my actual dream
maybe
job.
not final answer?
Um, let me give so the other options, as I was talking about earlier, being a policy advisor, or something like on Capitol Hill. I definitely want to work on Capitol Hill for a few years. Then I am considering law school. I don't know yet. I don't really see myself practicing law, but I think like just knowing about the law and using that to then formulate policy or to be an advisor would be cool. I don't know if it's worth it just because of how expensive law school is, which is why I don't know. I also like don't like reading, so I don't know how that works with law school. Um,
How
yeah,
does how does not liking reading fit into your life? I
I
just
hate reading actually. Not so I have this thing where I actually figured this out this year when I was taking my psychology class, but other people can in their brain visualize things. I can't. So when someone says picture a red apple, I can't. It's just like in my brain, it's just black. But I can picture myself picturing a red apple, if you know what I mean. It's kind of weird.
I get it
So
actually.
um, so when my AP Lit teacher this year was like, yeah, when I read, it's like a movie playing in my brain. And I'm like, that just doesn't happen for me. And so it's not as enjoyable
Yeah.
for me because I'm just reading words.
So do you tend to read nonfiction more than fiction?
I I would say it's more interesting to read nonfiction or
Yeah.
because nonfiction is like it's kind of like enriching my knowledge instead of like fiction which just like it's just like a story.
Yeah.
Um, but I even though as much as I want to read and I would love to be a reader, I just have always found like, oh, like I could read or I could watch this TV show, and I would always pick the TV show. So I think I want to work on that, definitely. Is like being a more avid reader. Our my lit teachers always say like, when they convince you to stop reading, that's when you like give up all your power, because you're giving up the power of being informed and then fighting back. Um, she was such a cool person. She she would always make like these little things in like whatever we were reading into like existential questions about life and society and the worlds we live in. And we spent a lot of time in that class talking about the idea of work, and is work like what you do to get money, or is that what your life's purpose is supposed to be? And the Great Resignation we would talk about in that class. It was amazing.
You've had some great classes. I feel like
Yeah.
your high school teachers were a lot better. I mean, I had some good ones, but I mean, I had to like teach myself history, like as an adult. Like I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't remember learning really anything. Like one time we watched Pearl Harbor. It's like, this is like the movie.
I
Like,
kind of like a side note, but I hated watching movies in school, because even if it was, well, okay, if it was like just for fun, like you could do whatever, you could talk during the movie or whatever, okay, that's fine. If it's like background, but like sometimes teachers would be like, you have to like answer these questions, you have to write an essay, and I just can't bring myself to watch a movie in class where I'm like sitting in this uncomfortable desk and there's like a billion things happening, and I'm like, I just can't. Like my attention span doesn't go that long where I can pay attention to just like a movie, and then also like read these questions and then answer the questions. And I always preferred like lecture, or like, I actually preferred lecture. I would kind of hate when we would have to like activity, like especially visual activities, because again, I can't visualize. So if we had to like draw something, I would hate it, because even though I understand what they're trying to do and like engage different parts of your brain and stuff like that, it wouldn't help me. Um, but yeah.
So
yeah.
when someone says, picture yourself holding a red apple, if you don't envision yourself envisioning yourself holding a red apple, do you just picture the two words, like you're like you and like an apple, the word
No,
apple?
just it would just be nothing.
Really? Like, but you
Yeah.
understand what they're saying though. So,
Yeah, yeah.
hmm,
It just,
interesting.
I like can't see it, if you know what I mean. Like some people have like very vivid imaginations of like they
Yeah,
can
I do.
see all these colors, and they can
Mm.
they can like especially artists, like I can never do art, and I always like in awe of like my friends who can paint and draw, and I'm like, how do you do that? Because they can kind of visualize the end product and I can't.
Hmm.
um
Wow, that's
yeah.
interesting.
That is really interesting. Yeah, I also have a very vivid, but I guess to be a writer and that
Yeah.
kind of have to. But that's interesting.
I'm just
Okay,
trying to
so
wrap my head around that right now, not being able to
Jayson,
visualize things.
we've reached the time where I need a quick intermission. So I'm
Oh,
gonna
okay.
I'm gonna take my quick break.
All right, that's cool.
I mean, so the other thing, um, so I have like an ongoing monologue, but some people don't. So there's kind of like
You have an ongoing like an internal monologue, you mean?
yeah,
What do you mean?
like I'm always thinking or talking to myself, like not out loud, obviously, but like in my brain, I'm like, oh, I can do this, I can do that. I wonder if that's going on. Like, oh, like unless something's playing, which that's why I think subconsciously, I think that's why I like watching TV so much, so I can like turn that off.
Like
But
what
if nothing's going on, I am always going.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's I have that too. I have medication for it though. What shows do you watch?
um, I watch all like, so again, kind of going back to my OCD. And before I had like all the streaming services, I would watch on, let's say, not streaming services. I'd watch them on other websites, and I would have a spreadsheet where I listed all the shows, and then I on this, so that'd be one column. On another column, I'd list where I left off. On the other column, I'd list what website I was watching on, like, and then I'd highlight and say, oh, if this show is canceled or if it was being renewed, like I'd highlight that. And that's where she went down to like 100, more than 100.
Wow.
Now I have like some of the streaming services, so I don't need to do that anymore. But I really am enjoying Succession. It's on HBO Max. It's really good. Suits as a kind of a classic. Love Schitt's Creek.
I like that one.
Yeah, I watch TV like it's a job. Like some people kind of just like turn it on, turn it off, like come back to it, maybe never. And I will stay up and watch, and I will. Right now I'm watching Westworld because they came out with a new season, so I just started, so I actually started season 1 like 2 days ago. Now I'm on season 2. I get through things really quickly.
Have you started The Boys yet?
Yes, I'm caught up.
Yeah,
I love that show.
It's the greatest show I've ever seen.
It's so good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. I totally agree. Wow, that's interesting. I guess I watch TV like it's a job too. I never really thought about it before.
But kind of interestingly, I don't watch movies. Like I kind of don't like watching movies.
Yeah.
Because I always want a more developed storyline, and I'm always asking after a movie. Every time after a movie, I'm always asking questions, and I don't like that. I like closure, and so that's why I love TV shows.
I'm so.
I like that too, and I get mad if they don't give you closure. Like when they end the series, I'm like, no, you ended it. Now I need closure.
Exactly. What happened with Game of Thrones? Like, they're making a prequel actually, and I think it's coming out soon.
Yes, it
is. I'm excited for that. But I was like, you can't end off like this. Like, I don't know. I get very passionate about, like, I feel like politics and TV shows are like the two things I love to talk about.
Wow, you would have hated growing up in the 80s when at the end of Empire Strikes Back, you had to wait 3 years to find out what happened to Han Solo.
No. I've watched on the background like Star Wars, but I have never like actually sat down and watched the whole thing from start to finish. I really want to do that. Same thing with the Marvel movies. I've watched like a few of them, but I want to watch it from like the first one that came out all the way down because I want to know the whole like storyline.
Yeah, I would suggest if you watch Star Wars to watch it in the order that they were released, not in the order of the chronological and the anthology or whatever. Go start with A New Hope because you may not get past the first one. The prequel, you may just stop. Sorry. This is what happens when you leave. I turn it into a nerd session.
Every time I leave, he turns it into like TV, which some of it I can get. Like I've seen the majority of the Marvel movies, and I like old Star Wars and old Star Trek. I don't like a lot of the new stuff. Like I couldn't get behind some of that.
You know what's surprisingly good? Orville.
Oh, I haven't watched that. I've always like. So here's one thing on like streaming services. I feel like the people who are writing those descriptions for the TV shows are like purposely trying to make me not watch them.
Yeah.
The descriptions are so bad. And I'm like, and sometimes I watch it just like there's nothing else. There's literally nothing else. And I'll just watch it. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so good. And the description is like so bad. I'm like,
I've seen that too. The description is there to entice people that you're not.
Yeah.
Same thing has happened to me so many times. Same with the trailers. Exactly the same thing. I'll be like, this looks stupid, but then like I'll read about it somewhere and I'll be like, oh, maybe I will give that a shot. Or I'll see a clip on TikTok or something and I'll be like, those are good actors, I'm gonna watch that, and I'll realize that it was way better than the trailer or the write-up. Totally. I totally agree.
Oh, but I think we're on what I want to do in the future. So,
yes.
Kind of to get back to that. So I said policy advisor. If I made enough money, I would definitely be an executive assistant. I don't think anyone gets paid that well doing that.
Come out here to Hollywood and you'll make a lot of money.
if I become friends with like a celebrity superstar or an influencer.
Sometimes they're just hiring executive assistants for celebrities out here.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can just find the job posts.
Yeah. The other thing, so I think consulting, even though like it's kind of weird, like
you'll fit right in DC. Everyone's a consultant.
Exactly. So I think like consulting is cool because like from what I know of it, which it's like a joke online, like no one actually knows what consulting is, but so from what I know, it's just like you're bringing up solutions to problems that a client has, and you're doing that through slideshows. And I was like, I can make slideshows. And so I was like, okay, that's an option. Um, because I feel like I always hear like the work-life balance is horrible because you're always traveling and it's a lot of long hours. Um, I think I could do that for a few years. Um, I think even though teachers don't get paid enough, I think later in my career, maybe I don't know, 2 decades in, I'll go back and I'll try and teach. Um,
Why do I
and
think you have a spreadsheet somewhere that has
Yeah.
every year
oh,
planned out?
Drew's
I have. Oh my
Drew's
god!
decades Drew's
in
career
my
plan, one decade at a time.
notes app, I have like a chronology of like my dream, and then so it was like undergrad law school, intern for the DOJ, clerk for this justice, and it just keeps going, and then like it ends off with me being uh a political analyst on on like a news network, and that was like the retirement.
I can see that happening. I can see you making all of those things happen though.
Oh my
Yeah, I'm
god.
like I just really I think I waste so much time doing that, just like kind of writing down different like, oh, I would love to do this. When I was like a freshman, I would like write out like what majors I would want to do, what minors I would want to do. As a freshman, I was like, I wasted so much time doing that, but I really find joy in like just like having some sort of like knowledge of what I want to do in the future, even if it's not like concrete.
Well, it sounds like you didn't daydream because of your imagination thing.
No, it wasn't daydreaming. I can never visualize myself doing any of those things,
Wow,
but yeah,
that's pretty
I don't know.
helpful.
Yeah, my brain just doesn't stop.
Sorry, go ahead with your
So
thing. I'll derail you every chance I
I
get.
have to, so yeah, I have to like, so what do your parents think about like all of these different like things that you get involved in and being so political, being that they're not political,
Wait,
and
I
all of
bet I
these
know.
life plans?
I bet he's the only kid in the world where his parents are telling him to stop doing things and slow down.
I mean, so my mom, she works 2 jobs. She's a nurse. She works 2 jobs right now, and she's getting her master's right now.
Oh, so it runs in the family then, like.
So but I think, yeah, um, so when I was a kid, when I was like first born, we were living in Jersey City in like a smaller house or a townhouse, and I had like my earliest memories were like of her doing like of her reading late at night, and I would be up with her, and my dad at that time worked night shift, so he would come home or at like I don't know 1 or 2 a.m. or so we'd all be up, and she'd be studying, and she'd also work then, and then kind of to see how far we've come from there to now. It's really inspiring. That's kind of what makes me nervous about going into politics and advocacy and public policy, because it's not a lucrative field if you're trying to keep your values intact, I say. Like obviously I know lobbyists make millions, but I don't really see myself becoming a lobbyist for an oil company or anything. So that's kind of why I have all these like different contingency plans of like, oh, I can go into consulting because that would make more money than being a policy advisor or whatever. Um, and they've always supported me, even though they wanted me to be a doctor. That was like what they always wanted me to be. And so I'm really grateful that they have been supporting me, but they don't really know a lot about what I do because they just kind of don't have the time to like. They're always working and I have my brother, my grandparents. We all like live together, so they're always making food or getting groceries, or they're always doing things. Um, and so they're like, oh yeah, they like have never had to like. My mom always says like, oh, I've never had to tell you to do your homework. I've never had to tell you to like get your grades high because I don't really know why, but I've always had this intrinsic motivation or like standard on myself. Like my parents would be like, oh, like it's okay if you have a B. Like but I wouldn't let myself have a B. Like it's weird. It's kind of the opposite for I think other like mostly every kid is like every kid would love parents who weren't hawks on them or weren't like supervising their every move. But I'm like kind of my own parent. Like it's like I like have higher standards on myself than they do. Um, yeah, I just it's weird now. Now that I'm an adult, it's like okay, like nothing's really changed for me. I like have like the same level of autonomy, and I um I had a phase in the pandemic where I'd like cook my own food because I had the time. Um, yeah.
I'm pretty sure you were born an adult.
I know, I know you were like adulting harder than like some adults I know my age.
No, yeah, and I also during the pandemic, I got into this like spiral where I would watch Dave Ramsey shows. I don't know if you know who that is. He's like a conservative talk show host, but he wouldn't talk about politics. He'd talk about like budgeting and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And then one day I was like to my parents, I was like, "Do you guys have a budget?" And they're like, "No." And I was like, "You need to make a budget." And so I would tell them to do that. Because I don't know, I just like right now, like I'm in the sphere of like watching Shark Tank shows or like Shark Tank clips because I just love um kind of being an adult. Like I love that, like even though it's scary, like budgeting, and I think that's just I don't know if it's fun. It's definitely not fun, but it's liberating to kind of like you have your own destiny, like you can control your future kind of thing.
Comforting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
comforting. And kind of talking about, so a few years ago there's like those tests where they can like your mental age, like you can kind of gauge that, and mine was like 46, and all my
I would
friends
have
were
guessed
like
that.
all my friends were like 12 or 13, and it was like, oh, okay.
46.
Yeah, I could. So yeah, so funny enough, I also wrote an article about money stress. Like, right, Dhruv, and what you have already figured out is what it takes some people like many years, right? And like, I interviewed financial analysts and so forth and money experts, and they were like, yeah, like you can't fix what you don't know. So if you don't have a budget, you don't know what is going out or how you're spending or what your habits are or any of that, then you can't have any semblance of controlling, or fixing the situation. So and so many adults, like some people never learn that, and then some people have to learn it, end up learning it once things have gone terribly wrong, and then they have to go and educate themselves. So it's really interesting I think you're probably the only 18-year-old that I've heard say like, yes, you need to have a budget.
I mean, yeah, I mean, kind of related to money, but like, so when I had a job, and so I would obviously get money from that. And even though I don't need a budget because everything like I kind of need is supplied for me. And so I would really only spend my money on like eating out and like stuff like that. And that I wouldn't really worry about. But like anytime I wanted to buy clothes or do anything like that, it would hurt me like physically when I have to like pay for things. Like just paying for anything is like hurts my soul. Like, and I don't know why. Like it's just like money's like a made up thing. Like it's like whatever. But I don't know. Like same thing. And I think that's another thing my parents taught me is like always look for the best deal and never impulse buy, and you know, look for coupons and look for different promo codes. And so I honestly can say I don't think I've ever bought, or like very few things I've bought full price. I think everything else I bought has been something on sale, some discount, something.
I really wish we were sponsored by honey.com right now, because I would totally be able to go right into that. It's a website that you can go in, and what you do is you put in your access code and it gives you a, never mind. Do you use honey.com?
I use honey.
All right, there, you know what I'm talking about. Oh, we get a future sponsor maybe.
My God, there are people in the chat.
I know people love you, man.
Yeah, saying Dhruv actually helped me create my budget. I love this.
Dhruv saved my kitten from a tree.
Who is saying
No,
that?
just kidding.
No, that's not in there.
I was
I
like,
just
which
wanted
one
to
of my friends?
Someone says Gerard says I saw him in the mall one day, and also that Dhruv is so cool. Yeah, I love this chat.
Oh my God, I think people are sending it around because my phone is blowing up. I have 166 unread messages.
I
That's
see
awesome.
somebody must have just discovered that because like Gerard says, "Oh my God, is that Dhruv Shah?" So they've just discovered that you're streaming.
That's awesome.
So Dhruv, what are your like we're talking about future and forward, and what are your hopes for the future of our country as a young person?
Yeah, and I'd like to apologize to your generation, honestly.
I mean,
for mine.
I think there are valid policy disagreements between the left and right. The only thing I wish would happen is that those disagreements are like the conversations that we had within my generation, or the millennials at least, where it's like the people who these decisions are going to affect the most are the people in power to then affect change. I don't know, like even like Nancy Pelosi, who I may agree on or disagree with on certain issues, I just automatically, because she's in a generation that isn't going to be affected by the decisions she and her colleagues make, it automatically like makes her kind of uncredible, if that makes sense, or like it like automatically discounts her opinion, because I'm like, especially on climate change, if you're not going to be living through this, how can you say the Green New Deal is so crazy? Like, if you're like, I just don't understand that. Same thing. And I was listening to this podcast that was kind of debating a policy that was brought up by the Democratic gubernatorial candidate in South Carolina, who was saying we should have an age limit of 72 for politicians. And the podcast host was saying, oh, that's like ageist, and you would never want, like in a true democracy, for it to be truly democratic, you want people to choose whoever they want. And I agree with that. And she was saying how like, oh, if we had that, then Bernie Sanders wouldn't be a senator. But I think it may be called ageist, but at a certain point, you don't have skin in the game. You lose what you want, like your motivation to make the country a better place, because at some point you're going to be leaving, right? And even though I love Bernie Sanders, I do think it's time for a new generation of leadership. And unfortunately, we haven't really seen that in the progressive wing, especially within the elected officials, as much as we see like Bernie Sanders, who can really motivate and appeals to a wide group of people. We don't see that now. And that's really depressing. And I'm worried about what that means for the future. But honestly, like and the Republicans are actually better on this issue. The average age of a Republican member of Congress is lower than the Democrats. So it's not even like a partisan thing. I just think there more young people need to be in Congress. And when we're talking about representation, age is another thing that needs to be represented as much as, race or gender or anything else. The median age of the member of Congress should align with the median age of the country. And that's not happening anytime soon. I think Democrats median or average might be like 70, which is crazy.
That is crazy, especially since the decision, like, and for the for the judges, that's going to be affecting you guys for the next 70 years or
And
something
then
ridiculous.
that's an area where everyone wants to talk about young people and
Yeah.
nominate young people to the court so they can serve out
Yeah.
their whole lives,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then we don't want old people there,
Yeah.
right?
It's
Yeah, but I wonder, like, so the issue of like being out of touch, right? Like, is it maybe not necessarily the age, but like time in this corrupt system?
Maybe,
And
yeah, maybe.
so, because I sort of feel like the longer that you're in there, and because the system is so broken and corrupt, then you're much further. Versus, like, because there are lots of older people that I know that have like great values and do care deeply about what happens to the next generation, whether they have kids or grandkids or not. Some people, that's
Yeah.
just their intrinsic value system is, like, just to kind of think about things in that way. So I feel like more so than age, it's a corruption issue. And like, if you've been in there for 40 years, like kicking around and have been part of a lot of these really bad decisions, and now you're taking money from all of these PACs and corporations, then you're disconnected in a whole, like, you're disconnected from your peers, even that are older people that have core issues.
Yeah. And so this podcast was also talking about term limits and how the podcaster thought that was also inherently anti-democratic, which it may be, but I think term limits are a good thing. Just because even if we, for example, love whoever's in office, at some point we just need fresh new people, and especially in right now in the system that isn't working, right? So I support term limits for senators and congressmen. I don't think your career, and I think this is a Republican who said this, but I don't think your career should be a politician. Like, I don't think that should be like your livelihood. That should be like a part of your life, and it's like a public service that you're doing. And then you should go back to whatever your job was or whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
But I don't think like you should be like, that should be your job. Like that, I don't know, like that's weird to me. Is like, why? Like, the idea is that you're giving up, like you're sacrificing so that you could serve your country and you can well represent the people, your neighbors, and whoever's in your district. And that's just not what's happening.
Yeah. I agree with you. The problem is that it's so easy to get rich when you're a politician. So, and you need them to help you change the system, and they don't want to, so it's just a circle.
Yeah. And it's I think the other thing is, so many times, because of our two-party system, it's like you don't really have options in terms of who you can take, because it's like it's always the lesser of two evils that you're voting for. And that's just depressing in a purported democracy that's supposed to reflect the will of the people. And then, so yeah, I think ranked choice voting would be like solve so many, even I think, and that I think could be done. I think I see that happening. It happened in New York City, even though Eric Adams is crazy. But I think that just it's I think it's more of a democratic system, and then you can't be called a spoiler or be like shamed for your vote, which I really don't believe in. I hate when, especially in reaction to the abortion case, when people were like, "Oh, all the people who voted for Donald Trump, all the white women who voted for them." I'm like, why are you shaming people? Like, that's not going to help you get them to vote for you the next time. I really don't like that.
Yeah, you're right. I see a lot of that rhetoric going around, like, it's these people's fault, because I'm like, no, it's the people that are doing these legislation, and it's the
Mhm.
money flowing in, and like the people that are buying these outcomes. It's not the person, like your neighbor, that voted in a way that you don't agree with. It's
Yeah.
not their fault.
No, yeah, I think that's one of the things that's making us so divided is people are saying it's like it's not Donald Trump, it's the voters, it's the supporters of Donald Trump. And yes, some of them may be as bad and as crazy as him, but a majority, or like I would say at least some of them aren't like crazy or bigoted people. Some of them are just were upset with the system and needed to make a protest vote and just voted for Donald Trump because like what's the worst that can happen? Obviously, we saw the worst that can happen, but I don't know. I think that rather than blaming people for who they voted for, just bring better candidates.
Yeah, and then like try to connect with people and see like what things that they care about, where they're hurting, and then like how can we help? How can we foster community and show people what kind of actions that they can take instead of yelling at each other on the internet?
Yeah. Well, you what we need to do is make it so that everybody wants to learn, and then not
Mhm.
criticize each other, so that it becomes an open conversation. But with our economic system, some people are just so tuned out because they're just suffering, and then you
Mhm.
have the people that are just so they benefit from policies geared for the rich. But if everybody were at least started at comfortable and happy and secure, I think we would then be able to be a group of people that, hey, what else can I learn now that I have a house or a place to
Mhm.
live, food, and I'm safe and I have education and healthcare. Now what else can I learn? But the way it's designed right now, and there are people that just they're too distracted to learn anything.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of that has to do with the media and the media institutions in our country, because all the corporate one, like all the big ones are beholden to their corporate sponsors and advertisers, and so they can't. And that's kind of, I don't know. That's an issue where I actually don't know what we can do about it because it's like yes, they do need to create some sort of revenue so that they can hire their journalists and reporters and pay for however much money it costs to then produce whatever reporting they're doing. But to then be obviously there's going to be a skew if you're writing a story about Johnson and Johnson and they're one of your advertisers, obviously there's going to be a skew on the story. I mean,
Oh, you'll
just
be lucky in
inherently.
some cases if the story even gets written.
Yeah, exactly.
Real, depending on what it is, it might get killed if it brings enough revenue.
And then for
And
some people, like a subscription based model isn't feasible, right? Like um a lot of people can't afford 5.99 a month to get access to a newspaper or some news media. And then the cable news, obviously that goes back to the corporations and the advertising, and then the soundbite isms of all that. Like it's just all like 5-minute clips. You're never able to have this kind of conversation where you're going in depth, going off on tangents, and having a good conversation about different people's perspectives and how that can meet in the middle kind of thing.
that's why we started this, to be able to have in-depth conversations with
Mhm.
people, on different things, and so we can see where we all connect.
I think
And
that's one of the big benefits of independent media in general is um, they're not even, and most of them I think have like they're honest at least about their skews or their beliefs, and so you can kind of take everything they say with a grain of salt. um but it's just so much, it just comes off as more authentic because I know that you aren't purposefully misleading me or leaving something out because you are advertising or because your advertiser is this person or whatever.
a lot of it is also these algorithms, is
Mhm.
like they are just every big media, everything is the algorithm. And like, and so it's hard to even get stuff put out if it's doesn't, it's not like SEO friendly, or it doesn't
Mhm.
align with you. And so then, and I'm always like, but sometimes people don't know what they need to know, right? Like, because nobody has written that story, nobody's done that research. And, so like, there could be this very valid, great story, something happened that people would be like, oh yeah, this is helpful and
Yeah.
interesting, and helps me make a decision, or whatever, or informs me about a policy or something. And they might not think to Google it because they might not know, right? Like, or it might be
Yeah.
news, or and so I feel like I'm always fighting that fight of like, but what about the other stuff? Like, because it's important too, and we don't always know what we need to know, right? Like,
And then I think, as Jayson was saying, like some people just don't have the time to, read these lengthy articles or watch, you know, 30-minute long explanations of different things. And so that's why it's really important for us to then have those conversations and, you know, at least at least offer to be like, oh, like if you have any other questions on this, like feel free to ask me. Or because at least then they're not doing the heavy lifting of having to then find their own resources or find their own sources or finding their own media to consume. You're giving them an option. You're reaching out and you're saying, hey, like, I don't know if you heard this is going on, and let me know if you have any questions on this. Or I think that's really important. Just like, because that's the way I think a lot of people stay informed is people find their, especially my parents, they just take whatever they see in their WhatsApp group chats or their Facebook, and they just think that's true. And especially they talk a lot about Indian politics, and so much of that is propaganda. And every time I tell them, not them, but like my grandparents who are older, or aunts and uncles, and I tell them, oh, that's propaganda. They're like, what are you talking about? It's true. I'm like, no, it's here. Like, let me show you. Like, it's propaganda. And there, it's a lot more like obvious to see, at least from my perspective, rather than here, because here it's like, oh, we're being objective and neutral, and they're just like straight on like not true. And um that's the way people get their news, is Facebook and group chats and stuff like that.
Yeah, if you and it all and all whatever you follow, it will regurgitate
Yes.
that back to you.
Mhm.
So yeah, so you're in a bubble, and that's what you have to remember, is that you're in a bubble. Everyone
Yep.
is, even if you think you're right and correct, and even if you are right and correct, it doesn't matter. You probably should look out. Maybe everybody should have two Facebook pages, one where they go completely right and one where they go completely left, and then just squish them together.
I mean, I try to do that. Like sometimes I'll visit different conservative activist pages, and I'll like scroll. It just angers me. Like the uh, like obvious like misleading things, or like the bigoted comments. Like it's just like I get angry. Like I can't,
Oh yeah.
like it's hard. That's actually, it's kind of funny. Like no one would kind of expect this, but I watched The View,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of like funny on YouTube. I watched the clips of The View.
Mm-hmm.
And I watch it because it's like such a different like audience. Like it's meant for stay-at-home moms.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's it's like Whoopi Goldberg, who's always talking about lower taxes and like always like hates progressives, but like is good on social policy or like issues. Sarah Haynes, who like she's from Iowa, she's like a centrist and like whatever. Joy, who's like funny, she used to support Bernie Sanders, then went to Biden. I don't, because she got scared of like the whole electability thing. She named her dog after Bernie and then supported Biden. It's crazy. And then Sunny Hostin, who's super smart, she's a prosecutor. She's Catholic, but she's progressive. But she like, I don't know. Sometimes they just miss things, and I'm like, if you knew about this, you would agree. Like, I don't know. And then they're trying to fill in their conservative seat. Um, and with Meghan McCain, I would like get angry watching, but it's like at least I had exposure to like what the talking points were. And that's why I watch the shows. Like, even though no one there on the panel really represents me per se, I can see like what the general like gist of like the media that day is, or like the opinions that day. I would like, I think those type of shows, like panel shows, like like people from different backgrounds having a discussion, are super like interesting, especially if the people are truly approaching it in like a good faith fashion and are truly from different viewpoints. Like I know the Fox News tried to recreate it with the Five. That show like makes me insane because it's like four people who are conservative, and then like I basically believe in the basically exact same thing, and then like one person who's like liberal, but like is like a Joe Manchin liberal. So it's like, are you like, are you serious?
Yeah, definitely. Wow.
So Cherish says Dhruv Shah
OMG.
for president 2042.
Another
Is that
fun.
is that in your plan?
Um, my friends joke, they're like, "Oh, you're gonna be president," or my family also jokes about that. Like, oh, like my family's like, when you're in the White House, will you invite us over? Can we have a sleepover? And I was like,
Sleepover.
I was like, I don't think that's what you do in the White House.
I like that was what they wanted to do though. Have a
Yeah.
sleepover.
Yeah.
That's funny. So, all right, well, I think we made it through our questions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd like to
that
ask a different last question of mine than normal because
All right.
because Ben Carollo, what would you do if you woke up tomorrow and you were 15 inches tall?
15 inches tall.
Yep.
I think I just live and not worry about anything, like because you can't be really seen.
15
I guess
inches
you
tall?
can. Oh yeah. I don't know.
It's like a cat.
Um,
You could
yeah, I
ride the
guess.
cat. I might try to ride the cat.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, what
Yeah.
would you do? Because now you wake up, you're 15 inches tall. Not what would your life?
I think I just sleep.
Oh wait, this is a thing where you can't picture it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Kind of.
All right.
I just love like sleeping. Like I think I just sleep. Like sleep,
Okay.
wake up, watch a TV show, like see whatever's on, and just like watch, and then go back to sleep.
Would it change any of your future plans at all, or?
I mean, I don't think anything. I don't think I can go to college 15 inches tall.
This is fascinating. All right. Well, I'll tell you the other one now, but I'm really interested. This is another question I'd like to ask. If where you are right now, someone comes in the door that looks exactly like you, except they're disheveled, they're dirty, they have a cut on their face, and they say, "I'm from the future. Come with me right now." What would you do?
I would go.
Nice.
I think that'd be so funny.
Oh, nice.
I think that'd be so
No
cool.
hesitation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, life and just thinking about life and like what I want to do in the future. Like I don't want to grow and be old. Like I don't like picturing that. Like I don't, so like I kind of like just doing things and like it's like whatever. Like it was like sometimes I think about like if I was meant to like die now, I was meant to I can't change anything about that. Like you know what I mean? Like I just like so like for that like a future problem, it feels like if I was gonna go into society where like everything burned down, like oh well, like things happen. Like that's just like my attitude towards like certain things. Like, oh well.
Yeah. Well, you might need that for the future that's coming right now.
Yeah, as we descend deeper and deeper into fascism with the Christian right. Yeah, but I like good answers though.
Yeah, definitely.
I like the like if you were 15 inches tall, you'd just be like, yeah,
I'd sleep a lot.
I'd get rid of my life plan.
Well, what's the like generic? What's the expected answer?
For that one, I don't think there is one. Most people say they will go with the future person. The only person I've known like 3 or 4 people that were like iffy, and Rena's one of them. She's just like, I got a lot of questions.
Yeah, I was like, I would probably eventually go with them, but like I would need to like interrogate them first.
Right.
I always have a lot of questions. That's just who I am.
Yeah, best answer I've ever heard was I would ask them for the password. Like they had already.
Yeah, who said?
One of my best friends, Mark. He said it like this fast too.
Yeah, I feel.
Of course I would, but I would ask him for the password, and I said, "You have a password already?" He's like, "Of course I do."
That's so smart though.
You have to be ready for those things.
Yeah, that's really good. People have
Yeah.
like creative answers to those things. I like I like suck at like solving riddles because I can't think outside the box kind of thing.
Hmm.
Like I am not a creative person. So I like love people who can like do like just make those kind of like on the spot, like just think of that. I'm like, oh, like that's so cool. Like I would have never thought of that.
Are you good at math?
Yeah,
You are? Do you want a math riddle?
sure.
Okay. Hold on a second. Let me think for a second.
Like, do you have one prepared,
Oh
Jayson?
yeah. Oh yeah. It's something. It's just I have to have it ready. Okay. You've probably heard it before. A lot of people
Mhm,
have. Don't look at the chat. Um, three businessmen come into town and they go to a hotel. Just tell
mhm.
me if you've heard it before, so I don't go
No.
through the thing. All right. The person behind the counter said it's going to be $30. So the three businessmen go, great. They each give $10,
Mhm,
and they say, well, your room's up there. Have a good night, and here's your key, and they go. Then the manager says, after they're gone, oh my goodness, wait a minute. Actually, it was $5 off. And he tells the bellboy, please go give this $5 to them. I forgot that we had a sale today on rooms.
mhm,
So the bellboy's like, oh, I can't break $5 three ways. So he puts $5 in the register, takes out 5 ones, takes $2, puts it in his pocket, has $3 left, goes up to the room and opens and knocks on the door. They come out like, here you go, here you go, here you go. There was a special tonight, so there was a deal on the room. Have a good night.
mhm.
Now each one of the men have now paid $9 each. 9 times 3 is $27,
Yeah.
plus $2 in the bellboy's pants pocket.
Mhm.
Where did the other dollar go?
What do you mean? That's 25
27
plus the
plus
2 minus the 2, so 25.
no 20 no. Hold on. Hold on. No, wait. They each paid $9.
Yeah,
9 times 3.
it's 27.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And you give each one of them $1 back. So now they've all paid $9, so $27.
Yeah.
And there's $2 in his pocket.
Yeah.
27 plus 2 is 29. Where's the extra dollar gone?
Oh, okay. I think I've heard versions. I never understood it. So each of
Yeah,
them
it's
paid,
hard.
so each of them got 3, and then so they paid plus 2. I don't know. I think it's just the way you add them. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's going
I
outside the parentheses.
sure.
That's what it is. It's using, yeah.
I also sucked at like math problems. I would
A train
I
leaves
just
Chicago going 80 miles an hour headed towards New York City. Another train leaves New York City going 40 miles an
oh,
hour.
and then physics. Oh my God. The free body diagrams, I could never visualize
Yeah, I
that.
don't like those either.
I'm
Oh, that's interesting.
on the right or English, so any kind of math that's not like just your finances or
Mhm.
like just very basic math is like, nope.
I wish that we learned more about finances in school. I I mean they do have like a financial management class, but it's kind of like it's like how do you write a check? Like it's not,
Mm,
you know. And I didn't take that class, so I missed out. But I think that should be like more of a mandatory like every
Mm.
every year integrated in your like regular math class. Like you need to learn how to, I don't know, do different things. Yeah, especially with taxes, like I it's I just don't understand. And my parents like they kind of just give it to their accountant, and I'm like I think they like I don't know. I think my aunt was telling me I should have gotten a refund, and then they're like, "You didn't get a refund," and then I was like, "Oh, I don't know." Like I was like, I just
yeah,
give it to my parents.
it's way more complicated than it should be, to be honest.
Yeah.
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 Oh yeah. I mean, then like you also have this whole industry of account, like
Uh-huh.
it's complicated in a way that it doesn't need to be because this industry is um like lobbying to make it that complicated
Yeah.
because there's so
I
much money that they make off of it.
it's kind of like a joke. I think I heard it on social media first, but it's like the IRS knows exactly how much you have to pay because if you don't pay it, they're gonna audit
Mhm.
you. But they won't tell you. Like it's like you like we know, okay, you owe this much, but we're not gonna tell you how much you owe. Figure it out. Like just tell us.
Yeah, and like when you do, like I do independent contracting, and then you
Oh,
got to
it's
pay
so
your like
complicated, right?
your estimated, and so then you have to like guess what
Mhm.
you're gonna make for the year, and then make your quarterly payments, and you don't always know, and like
Yeah.
somehow I never get money back.
I
It's very
was
frustrating.
I was actually one of my ongoing monologues, one of my internal monologues, I think a few nights ago was like, I don't. There's so many different types of taxes. Like, I don't think there needs to be this many. Like, just simplify it. Um, like income tax, wealth tax, property tax. Just call it a day. Like, there's so many other taxes. Like, I don't know.
Well, the more variables, the more you can screw around with the system,
Yeah.
tweak it
Mhm.
here
And
and there.
it's all, and like the way it's made is it just like the wealthy can really benefit from it. It's because we don't have a team of accountants or lawyers or tax attorneys to, you know, go
Yeah.
through every detail and make sure we made as much as we can.
And not only that, like the IRS doesn't go after those wealthy because they can't afford to fight the team of
Yeah, yeah.
attorneys that, so they're like, oh, we're just gonna go after the
The
person
smaller
that's
guy.
making like
Yeah.
60K a year and just getting by. And
Hmm.
yes, that's infuriating in and of itself.
Yeah. I think like that should be like the thing is like, especially if you're just working one full-time job where you're working like something straightforward that isn't complicated. You're not a business owner, or maybe you're not an independent contractor. Like those people should just get like a check or like get a bill and be like, this is what you owe in taxes. Like it's
Yeah.
straightforward enough. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of having
Yeah.
to even go through like a TurboTax or, like whatever people end up having to use if
And
you
I
can't
feel like
have an
it's an
accountant.
anxious process because it's like, what if I did make a mistake on this? Or what if I forgot this thing that I got? And it's like when I fill out like when I like you have to do those like forms when you like your W-9 or whatever. And it's like what if I get this one number wrong? Or what if I take this deduction and I'm not supposed to? Or like it's like like I always have to like double check 3 times, like triple check. And it's like, oh, what if I messed up on this? And now what if I get arrested? Like it's like it's worrisome.
You won't get
Same for
arrested.
me.
You have to withhold a lot of taxes to get
Yeah.
arrested.
Yeah, I mean, like I got uh audited, and this is why I will never move back to the state of Maryland because I still have a grudge. Like, so I worked for an employer as wasn't an independent contractor. So from my perspective, taxes, state and federal taxes were coming out of my
Hmm.
check. And then like a couple of years after I was no longer working for them, I got audited, and the state of Maryland said, well, you didn't pay your state taxes when you were employed. But I said, what do you mean? I have a pay stub that shows that state taxes were taken out. So
Yeah.
maybe the employer didn't pay, but I'm like, I paid this. And so my accountant took that, and they were showing, like trying to like figure it out. And like they were just having none of it basically. And so I ended up having to pay like I think
No.
$2,000 or something like that I didn't have because I was in college at the
Yeah.
time. And there was like no way to get out because they tell you you owe it. And
Yeah.
oh man, and I will never forgive the state of Maryland. Like I'm like, I will never live in this state again. I was so mad about
You
it.
hear that, Maryland?
Yeah, like, like,
I'm gonna live on the Virginia side for sure.
yeah, don't go to Maryland.
Oh God. So we learned something. Don't go to Maryland.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes.
Moral of the story.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
And which is funny because like most people that are like from where I am, they grow up, they love it so much in Maryland, and I'm just like, oh, it's like I just have this like grudge that comes from various experiences. But yeah, like the taxes, and they really screwed me.
Mhm.
It seems like you should be able to do something about that. I'm surprised.
Yeah, well, I mean, at this point, but then I was talking to my account because I've had the same accountant for years, and like we were talking about, and we were like, you know what? I think the employer, I think they didn't they
Mhm.
didn't pay. So from my perspective, like
Oh.
the money was still coming out of my account, but from the state's perspective,
Oh.
they weren't getting paid. So what the account, because it was a very small, it was a mall kiosk that I worked at. It was a very small business. I don't think the woman knew what she was doing.
I see.
And yeah, and so and also maybe there was some fraud involved there.
Yeah, they went after the
And
gettable person.
yeah, and so the state was like, well, it shows here that you didn't pay. So, and even though I had those pay stubs, they're still like,
Right.
well, we don't have the money. So
with technology, it's kind of crazy to think like there's so much data and like information about us in like different areas, especially in the government, of like different, like your social security numbers, like with the social security, whatever. And like they know, like, I don't know, there's just like so much, and like I don't really understand like servers and like especially with crypto, like people talk about like mining. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like it's so I don't get it. I think technology is one of those things like I just don't get it.
You realize that all of us are going to get ads for things that we spoke about now because our phones are listening, because that happens to me all the time.
Yeah, no, it happens to me too.
yeah,
It's crazy.
we're all gonna get taxed.
TurboTax, yeah.
Yes.
Yep. And
Yeah.
what else? Any other products come from this? Oh, well, obviously honey.
Mhm.
We'll get the product and the web service.
Yep.
Yeah, that's crazy.
All right. Well, should we wrap,
Yeah.
Jayson?
Yeah. Unless there's something you wanted to mention.
Yeah, I
Dhruv?
guess unless Drew, there was something.
Yeah. Do you have anything you want to plug? Like for
final thoughts?
websites,
Or yeah, like usually
No.
we would ask guests to plug something. Do you
Yeah.
want people to follow you on socials? Or?
No.
I mean, you can. I guess for like political things, I'm not really active on my Twitter. I just like people's tweets. But
But what about your
my Twitter
TikTok?
is Drew J. My TikTok's like weird, like it's time lapses of like me doing homework.
Of course it is.
So
and making spreadsheets.
yeah, no, that's what it is.
Actually, it's
it's
you
like
could
me
probably
on my
leverage
iPad.
that to teaching people how to
Me,
do
it's
that.
like me on my
maybe.
iPad doing like my stats homework.
Nice.
So yeah, the I guess the only thing I want to mention is like if there's any young people listening, just like it can be intimidating to get your seat at the table, but just take it. Like you have more skin in the game. You have more on the line, and so work hard and take that seat and affect the change that you want to see. I feel like so many times we just have people furious and outraged, which is rightfully so, but then no action comes out of it. And that's what I find kind of like sad, is that like if we channeled it into action, into voting, into organizing, so much could get done. Yeah, so that's my message is do something, get out. In my last for my speech at graduation, my last kind of line was go out there and fight. And so that's what I'll leave here as well.
I love that. Do you have a video of your
Nice.
graduation speech?
Yeah,
I
do.
actually will watch that if you
my
send it to me.
mom took a recording. I'll send it to you guys.
Nice.
Yeah, send it. That's great. And it's true. Like if we don't harness that, like if we don't do something, then we don't have these rights, right? Like we know if they were hard fought, nobody just handed out any of these things that for years people took for granted, and we still didn't get everything that we needed. So yeah, you're right. You gotta get out there. You gotta do something.
Yeah, and like it's crazy to think like how the civil rights activists got the Civil Rights Act passed and the Voting Rights Act passed, or the suffragettes got women's voting, and it's like those are monumental things that they were able to accomplish. And now it's like looking at it, it's like it kind of looks hopeless to like see like, oh, can we do something at that scale? But if they did it, I mean, why can't we?
Yeah, it just takes enough people to get out there consistently and do something. And I say the same thing, like every time people march and they're mad, like I feel like they'll do that one day and you're like, it doesn't not like it, that march is like great to like get visibility and get people involved, but then I'm like, you got to have the next steps,
Yeah.
like, and so I feel like either you've got to be out there every day marching, like, and being a pain in the ass until your
Mhm.
demands get met, Like, or you also have to have, like, after the march, you've activated people, and then you got to have stuff for them to do
Yeah.
to accomplish the mission. And that is kind of what drives me crazy about what happens now, is like everybody's like, we're gonna march, and then you're like, and
Yeah.
oh,
It's
hi,
hard.
Oliver, right on
It's hard to
schedule.
get organized, especially on the left. The organizations don't have the infrastructure to handle or to organize, I think, this many people. And actually, Ryan Grimm had an article in the Intercept talking about how much of like there's like infighting within these organizations, which kind of we were talking about before, is like the left kind of eats each other alive while the right gets in line. And yeah, there's just so much that we can talk about and
Yeah.
about the future. But I guess another part of my message was like, I said, in a country that puts profits over people, oh shoot, I forgot the other one. And then the last one was guns over children. I said I still have hope. And so yeah, I think I said I have hope in us because I only really truly have hope in the next generation of people coming up and to do something, um, to fix our society, fix our country, fix the world.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think that's a really great note to end on.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us and doing this, Drew.
Thank
I
you guys
really
for
enjoyed
having
it.
me. Yeah,
Yeah,
I did
and
too.
anybody out there, please subscribe and like and share everything so we
Yep.
can get Dhruv even more exposure. Our
Yeah, and we'll
superstar.
have little clips coming out, so we'll share those.
Yeah, definitely. All right, cool.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
And
you.
All right.
have a
Are
good night,
we?
everybody.